poor young woman defended an older lady with no memory, not knowing she was the Duke's mother. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The day began like so many others in Isabel's life, with the bell of the nearby church and the call of her mistress rising almost at the same time. She rose from her narrow bed before the light had fully settled over Seville, washed quickly in the chipped basin, tied her dark hair back, and straightened her simple dress. There was no space for delay. In the kitchen below, the cook was already shouting about bread and coffee, and the housekeeper would be waiting with a list in hand. Isabel left her small rented room at the back of the house and stepped into the busy morning as though stepping into a play where she already knew every line. She crossed the small courtyard, nodded to the laundress, and entered the main house to receive her instructions. A brisk list, as always: fresh bread from the bakery near the cathedral, thread and needles from the mercer. A visit to the apothecary for a tonic her mistress insisted she needed, though she seemed perfectly strong. Isabel answered with quiet, "Yes, ma'am," and "At once, ma'am," and slipped back out with a small basket on her arm and a coin purse tied securely at her waist. The streets were already filling, voices overlapping, carts creaking, vendors calling their goods. The noise comforted her in a strange way. In the crowd, no one noticed a maid unless she was in the way. She walked quickly but not hurriedly, weaving between people with the ease of habit. Her thoughts fluttered ahead of her as they always did when she was alone. She imagined for a moment what it would be like to walk without carrying anything, without thinking of errands or the temper of her mistress, simply choosing a direction because she wished to see what lay there. Then she scolded herself quietly. Dreams did not put food on the table, and her mother's old words echoed in her mind. A girl like you must keep her feet on the ground. The sky belongs to others. At the bakery, she waited her turn in line, listening to the warm talk around her. Two women discussed a wedding in hushed, excited tones. An older man muttered about the price of flour. The baker's wife greeted Isabel kindly when it was finally her turn, for she had come many times before. "The usual loaf for your mistress?" the woman asked. "Yes, thank you," Isabel replied. "She also asked for some sweet rolls this morning." "Ah, she must be in good spirits," the woman said with a crooked smile. "Or perhaps she has guests." Isabel smiled back because it was expected, but she did not answer. Guests meant more work. She paid, placed the bread carefully in her basket, and continued on her way. The sun had risen fully now, pressing into the narrow streets, but many remained in shade, protected by overhanging balconies and the closeness of the buildings. The smell of bread faded, replaced by other scents, less pleasant, more human. She had almost reached the mercer when she heard it, a thin, strained voice, not loud but cutting through the street's murmur. It came from a side alley, half hidden between two tall houses. Another voice answered, sharper, impatient. Isabel slowed. She knew that sound, the false patience of someone who wanted obedience without question. "Madam, you are mistaken," a man's voice said. "We have been searching for you. Your family is worried. You must come with us." "I do not know you," a woman answered, her words refined but trembling. "I do not remember." "You do not have to remember," another male voice added, lighter but edged. "We remember for you. You cannot remain wandering like this." Something in those syllables made Isabel stop completely. She turned her head toward the alley. The sensible part of her mind said it was not her concern. People argued all the time. She had errands, a list, a mistress who would grow sharper if the bread arrived late. But another part of her, the part that had always stirred at the sight of someone lost or confused, refused to move forward. Her feet turned toward the sound. She took a few cautious steps into the alley. It was cool and dim, the light from the street thinning between the walls. At first, she saw only two men in dark coats, their backs turned to her, forming a kind of wall. They stood very close to someone she could not yet see, their bodies tilted inward, as if they meant to shield or corner. One gestured with his hands as he spoke, movements quick and insistent. "Madam, you are tiring yourself," he was saying. "You have already agreed." "I have not agreed," the woman insisted, her voice rising just a little. "Please do not take my things. They were given to me." Isabel stepped closer. At last she saw the woman. She was older, her hair almost silver though carefully arranged. Her gown, though dusty at the hem, was of fine fabric, cut in a style Isabel recognized from the women who rode in carriages past the square. A shawl lay gathered on her shoulders, and at her throat shone a necklace unlike any Isabel had ever seen up close, the stones small but clear. The woman's hands clutched the shawl and the necklace at once, fingers tense with fear. The man nearest her reached toward the clasp of the necklace with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Allow me to keep this safe until we reach home," he said. "It is dangerous to wear such things in these streets." "Home?" the woman repeated, eyes darting. "Where is home? I had a house with light on the patio, and water, and—" She faltered and pressed her hand to her temple. "I cannot see it. It is mist." "Exactly, madam," the second man said. "You are not well. Trust us. Your family is waiting." Isabel stepped forward then, her heart beating too fast but her voice steady. "Excuse me," she called, her words echoing more than she expected in the narrow space. "Is there trouble here?" Both men turned at once. Their faces were not rough, not what she would have expected from the sort who might truly harm someone. They could have been clerks or minor businessmen, their clothes decent, their hair carefully combed. One had a thin mustache, the other a broad forehead and quick, restless eyes. Those eyes flicked up and down, taking in Isabel's plain dress, her basket, her simple shoes. "None that concerns you," the one with the mustache said. "This lady is our charge. She became separated from us. We are returning her to her family." Isabel's gaze moved past them to the lady. The older woman's eyes were now on her, wide and strangely childlike. Something in them softened Isabel instantly. "Is that true, madam?" Isabel asked gently. "Do you know these men?" The woman opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head slowly. "They say I do," she whispered. "They say I am tired. I do feel tired, but I do not remember their faces." The restless-eyed man gave a quick laugh that did not suit the situation. "She has been confused all day," he said. "We have explained ourselves to her many times. You see the state she is in. You are a kind girl, I am sure, but this is not your affair." Isabel felt heat rising in her cheeks. She was indeed a girl and plainly dressed and no one of importance. Yet the unease in her chest refused to obey that simple fact. "She does not seem certain," she said. "Forgive me, but it might be better to take her to the nearest chapel. The priest could send word to her family. It would be safer." The mustached man's smile thinned. "We do not need a priest," he answered. "We have been entrusted with her." "Entrusted by whom?" Isabel asked, still calm. "May I know the name of the household? Perhaps I have heard of it. I may help you find it more quickly." "That is enough," the restless-eyed man snapped, then forced his tone back to politeness. "You may go on your way, señorita. You have done what good you can by asking. Now allow us to do ours." He reached again for the necklace. The older woman flinched and shrank back, her hand shooting out toward Isabel instead. Her fingers closed around Isabel's wrist with surprising strength. "Do not let them take it," she murmured. "This was given to me long ago. I remember that. I remember a garden, fountains, Cordoba." The word hung in the air. Isabel felt it as much as heard it. Cordoba. It was not a street name or the name of a baker. It was a city. It was also, she vaguely recalled from overheard conversations in the house where she served, the name of a powerful title. Duke of Cordoba. A man whose affairs were discussed in whispers by people who would never meet him. The mustached man's eyes narrowed. "Madam," he said firmly, "you are distressing yourself. Give me the necklace. We shall—" "No," the woman whispered, clutching Isabel's hand tighter. "I do not wish to go with them." The choice lay before Isabel as clearly as if it had been written on the stone beneath her feet. Turn away, and her day would continue as planned. The bread would reach the table on time. Her mistress would be satisfied. The image of the older woman's frightened eyes pressed against that possibility like a weight. Isabel set her basket down carefully at her feet. "Sir," she said, looking at the mustached man, "if she is truly your charge, you will have no objection to a short walk to the chapel. It is close. We can ask the priest if any family has sent word about a missing lady. Until then, I think it unwise to remove her ornaments or press her further." "She is confused," the restless-eyed man said, his impatience showing more clearly now. "She does not know what she wants." "Perhaps not," Isabel answered, "but it is plain enough what she does not want." Their eyes met. For a moment, All four of them were still. A breeze moved down the alley, carrying with it the distant sound of a bell. The restless-eyed man broke the silence first. "We do not have time for this," he muttered. "Come, madam. We insist." He stepped toward the woman again. Isabel moved at the same moment, placing herself slightly between them and the older lady without thinking. Her voice, when she spoke next, was quieter but firmer. "If you insist on moving her against her will," she said, "I will call out. There are many people in the street. They will come. Perhaps they will believe your story, perhaps not. Do you wish to risk such attention?" The mustached man drew in a breath, holding her gaze. There was no threat in his expression, only deep annoyance. He glanced over her shoulder toward the mouth of the alley, where the movement of people could be glimpsed passing by. The restless-eyed man followed his look and made a small sound of frustration. "This is absurd," he said. "A servant girl cannot— She can cause us trouble," the mustached man interrupted. "And we have had enough of that." He turned to the older lady and adjusted his tone. "Madam, we meant only to help," he said smoothly. "If you prefer to trust this girl and some priest, by all means do so. We will inform your family where you were last seen." "You know the name of her family, then?" Isabel asked quickly. "Of course," he replied, "but I see no reason to share it with a stranger who delights in delay." Isabel felt the woman's grip on her arm tighten at the word delay, as if any moment lost might carry her further away from what little she remembered. It made the choice simple. "Then we shall trust the priest," Isabel said. "If you truly know her household, you may send word to him instead of to me." The restless-eyed man shook his head, clearly angered but restraining himself. "You will regret interfering in matters you do not understand," he said in a low voice. "Perhaps," Isabel answered, "but I would regret it more if I walked away and something happened to her." He looked as though he wished to argue, but the mustached man laid a hand on his arm. "Enough," he said. "We waste time. Let us leave her with her guardian." His tone on the last word carried a layer of scorn, but he turned away. They walked past Isabel without another word, their steps brisk. As they reached the street, the mustached man glanced back once, his expression thoughtful and cold, then disappeared into the flow of people. The restless-eyed one did not look back at all. For a moment, the alley seemed emptier than before, as if all the air had left with them. Isabel let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. She turned to the older woman, whose hand still held her wrist. "Are you hurt, madam?" she asked. "Did they touch you?" The woman shook her head slowly. "No. They pressed me. They spoke and spoke until my thoughts turned to mud. I did not know where to step. Then you were there." Her gaze sharpened slightly. "Who are you?" "Isabel, madam," she replied. "Just Isabel. I am a maid in a house near here. I was sent to run errands." "Isabel," the woman repeated, tasting the name as if it were unfamiliar but pleasant. "Yes, you have a clear face. It is easier to remember a clear face." Isabel felt a small, embarrassed warmth at that. "Do you know your own name, madam?" she asked gently. "Where you live? I would like to help you return." The woman's brow furrowed. She released Isabel's wrist only to press both hands to her temples, eyes closing tight. For several heartbeats she stood like that, a fine statue trembling on a fragile base. Then she lowered her hands, her expression full of apology. "I do not know," she whispered. "It is as if there is a curtain where my thoughts should be. I push, and it does not move. There are glimpses, a courtyard with water, trees, people bowing, a young man with dark eyes. Alejandro, yes, that name I remember. Alejandro. And Cordoba. But there is no door to these things. They float." Isabel repeated the name softly. "Alejandro, Cordoba. Perhaps they belong to your family," she suggested. "Perhaps you are from that city." "Yes, perhaps," the woman said slowly. "But when I try to see the road there is only mist." "What shall I do, Isabel? Where shall I go?" The question was simple, and yet it pierced Isabel's heart. The woman's dress and jewels told one story, her confusion told another. The men's insistence troubled her more now that she knew how little the lady remembered. Isabel looked toward the mouth of the alley. People passed, busy with their lives. None of them knew that inside, a woman who might have once had many to attend her, now stood lost, unable to name herself. "We will go to the chapel," Isabel said at last. "The priest will know what to do. He speaks with many families. Perhaps he will recognize your description or know someone who can help. Yes, the woman agreed, though she sounded tired. If you say so, I will trust your judgment, Isabel. Those words made Isabel stand a little straighter. She picked up her basket and offered her arm. The older woman took it, her grip light but constant. Together they walked back into the street. A few people glanced their way, noting the contrast between Isabel's plain dress and the lady's fine clothes, but no one stopped them. The city's noise swallowed their small pair. They reached the chapel after a short walk. It was a modest place, the stone worn smooth by many hands and years. Isabel guided the lady inside and spoke briefly with the priest, a kindly man who had seen much of human distress. He listened, eyes thoughtful, then asked the older woman a few gentle questions. She answered as best she could, but her answers circled the same few fragments. Cordoba, fountains, Alejandro, a house that felt like a palace. I do not know her, the priest admitted quietly to Isabel afterward, as the lady sat near the front of the chapel, fingers moving over her necklace as if it were a lifeline. But that is not surprising. Seville has many visitors. She may be from another city, as she says. I will mention her at the next gathering of clergy. Perhaps one of my brothers has heard of a missing lady. In the meantime, Isabel asked, she cannot stay here all day and night, can she? The priest hesitated. We could find a place temporarily, he said, but I have seen how she clings to you, child. She seems calmer when you stand near. Isabel glanced toward the woman. It was true. When they walked, the lady's steps had faltered only when Isabel's grip lightened. In the chapel, her eyes had followed Isabel's movements like a child afraid of losing sight of a parent. I have a very small room, Isabel said slowly. It is at the back of the house where I serve. It is not grand, but it is clean. Perhaps she could rest there for a few hours, only until you hear if someone is searching for her. The priest studied her face. Your mistress, he said. What will she think? Isabel's stomach tightened. I do not know, she admitted. She is not cruel, but she does not like surprises. Still, if I do nothing, I will think of this lady all day. I will imagine her wandering. Sometimes, the priest said gently, charity requires courage. If you believe this is what you must do, I will not forbid it. I will come in the evening to see how she fares and to tell you if any news arrives. Thank you, Father, Isabel replied, half relieved and half afraid. She returned to the older woman and explained the plan as simply as she could. It is not a great house, she said, feeling the need to prepare her. It is only a room, but you may rest. You are safe there. Safe, the woman repeated, as if testing the word. That is all I wish. I have never thought of it before, but now it seems to be everything. They left the chapel together. On the way back, Isabel detoured briefly to the house where she served, heart pounding as she delivered the bread and the other purchases to the kitchen. The cook scolded her for being slower than usual. The housekeeper frowned and said she had better not make a habit of wandering. Isabel bit her tongue on a retort and murmured apologies, then asked permission to leave again on a small errand. Do you not have linens to mend? The housekeeper demanded. I will see to them before nightfall, Isabel promised. There is something I must do first. The housekeeper grumbled but waved her away. Isabel returned to the alley where she had asked the older woman to wait in the shade. Her heart eased when she saw her still there, seated on a low stone, hands folded, eyes closed. She opened them at the sound of Isabel's steps and smiled faintly. You came back, she said. Of course I did, Isabel replied. Come, madam. It is not far now. Her room was indeed small, barely large enough for the narrow bed, a wooden chair, and a chest where she kept her few belongings. A single window looked onto the inner courtyard of the poor house, where laundry lines stretched between walls and voices rose and fell throughout the day. Isabel watched the older woman's face carefully as she entered, wondering if the plainness of the space would shock her. Instead, the lady sighed with relief. It is quiet, she said. I like the quiet. There are no voices telling me what to remember. You are welcome, Isabel said, feeling shy. Please sit. The woman sat on the bed, smoothing her skirt with elegant hands. Up close, the fineness of her clothing was even more evident. The lace at her cuffs was delicate, the fabric of her bodice rich despite the dust at the edges. The necklace at her throat caught the light from the window, scattering it in small flashes. You must be thirsty, Isabel said. I will bring water. She filled a cup from the clay jug she kept near the door and offered it. The woman drank with small, careful sips, as if she had been taught to do everything with grace. Thank you, Isabel, she said when she finished. You are very kind. I hope I do not trouble you too much. It is no trouble, Isabel lied. The truth was that her mind raced with questions and worries. Do your hands or your head ache? Do you feel ill? Only tired, the woman replied. My thoughts run in circles. Sometimes I catch one and it looks clear for a moment. Then it slips away again. Perhaps rest will help, Isabel suggested. If you like, you may lie down. I can sit on the chair. I will not leave you alone. The older woman hesitated. I do not wish to displace you from your own bed, she said. It is not displacement, Isabel insisted. I have slept on the floor many times when my mother was ill. I am used to small spaces. Please, you will rest better if you lie down. At the mention of her mother, a familiar ache rose in her chest. Her mother had been gone 2 years now, taken by a fever that no remedy could seem to touch. The memory of those nights, sitting awake while her mother tossed and whispered, was never far from her. Perhaps that was why she could not leave this stranger to wander. Very well, the woman said softly. She lay down, her head sinking into Isabel's thin pillow. She closed her eyes. Her hand moved to her necklace again, fingers resting on the central stone. That necklace, Isabel ventured after a moment. It is beautiful. Do you remember who gave it to you? A faint smile curved the woman's lips, half in sleep, half in memory. A gift, she murmured. A promise, long ago. A sign that I would always have a place. Always be cherished. Her voice grew distant. I remember the words more than the face. Is that not strange? Perhaps the face will return, Isabel said gently. Sometimes memories come back when we do not expect them. Then I shall wait. The woman whispered. I have time, do I not? She drifted into an uneasy sleep, her breath uneven at first, then settling. Isabel watched her for a while, making sure she did not toss or cry out. When she seemed stable, Isabel moved to the chair and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. The room felt smaller with another person in it, but also strangely fuller, as if some important presence had entered. Outside, the noises of the house rose and fell. Someone laughed loudly in the courtyard. A child cried. A woman sang a few lines of a song before breaking off. Isabel listened and tried to order her thoughts. She had brought a stranger into her room without permission. If her mistress discovered it, she would be scolded, perhaps dismissed. And yet, if she had left the woman in the chapel or worse, in that alley, what would have happened? The memory of the restless-eyed man's tight jaw returned to her. No, she thought. This was the only path she could have chosen, and still looked at herself without shame. Time passed. The light shifted slowly across the floor, creeping toward the wall. Eventually the older woman stirred, opening her eyes in confusion that cleared when she saw Isabel. I'm still here, she asked. Yes, Isabel answered. You are in my room. You slept for a while. Do you feel any clearer? The woman frowned, testing her mind. No, she admitted, but I feel less heavy. Thank you. You were not called away. Not yet, Isabel said, but I must return to the main house later. If I explain that I have something important to attend to, they may allow me more time. And if they do not? The woman asked quietly. Isabel hesitated, then smiled with more courage than she felt. Then I will find another way, she said. We will manage, madam. I promise. Madam, the woman repeated, as if the word amused her. It suits me, does it not? I can feel that. But it is not enough. I wish I could give you my name. You will remember it, Isabel said, even if it comes one letter at a time. The woman's eyes shone with sudden tears. You have more faith in me than I have in myself, she said. Why? Because someone must, Isabel replied simply. As evening approached, the priest came as he had promised. He brought no news of a missing lady matching this one's description. I will continue asking, he said. There are other parishes. Someone must know of her. He took Isabel aside before leaving. If you need help, come to the chapel, he reminded her. If your mistress casts you out for this, the church will not let you starve. Thank you, Father, she said, grateful but determined not to let it come to that. After he left, she lit a small candle against the growing dusk. The older woman ate a piece of bread with cheese, apologizing for taking Isabel's simple food. Isabel reassured her again and again until the woman stopped protesting but continued to thank her with her eyes. When night settled fully, the noises from the courtyard softened. One by one, lamps went out in the surrounding rooms. Isabel helped the woman lie down again and spread her extra blanket over her. "If you wake and are afraid," Isabel said, "call my name. I will be here." "You are not afraid to sleep beside a stranger?" the woman asked. Isabel pulled a folded cloth from the chest to use as a thin cushion on the floor. "You are not a stranger anymore," she said. "You are my guest." That seemed to move the woman more than anything else. "Guest," she repeated. "It has been a long time since I felt like a guest anywhere. Lately I've felt more like luggage." She sighed, then smiled. "Good night, Isabel." "Good night, madam," Isabel replied. The room fell quiet. Long after the older woman's breathing had become even and slow, Isabel lay awake, staring up at the shadowed ceiling. Thoughts tumbled over each other in her mind. The men in the alley, the priest's concern, the risk she had taken. What if the men returned? What if they went to the authorities and claimed she had stolen the lady? What if the lady's family, wherever they were, misunderstood everything? Her eyes burned, but she forced herself to stay calm. She reminded herself that she had done nothing wrong. She had stepped in when someone needed help. Still, she knew that in this world, truth and justice did not always bow to the same master. A poor girl who stood between powerful people and what they wanted did not always fare well. Sometime near dawn, she slept at last. When she woke, pale light was already filtering through the small window, painting a faint square on the floor. The older woman was awake too, sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I have washed my face," she announced gently. "I hope I have not used too much of your water." "You use what you need," Isabel said, rising and stretching. "I will fetch more." She stepped out into the courtyard with her jug, greeted a few neighbors, and ignored the curious looks when they asked who had spent the night in her room. One or two had seen the older woman arrive. "Is she kin to you?" a woman asked, hanging linens. "No," Isabel said. "She is someone who needed a place to rest, that is all." The woman raised her brows. "Be careful," she advised. "Guests who wear jewels like that bring questions with them." "I know," Isabel murmured. Word traveled quickly in such houses. By the time Isabel returned to her room with the refilled jug, she could feel the stir of whispers moving along the walls like a draft. She pushed them aside and focused on the tasks before her. She helped the older woman wash properly, combed her hair gently, and adjusted her shawl. "You look quite well," Isabel said with a smile. "No one would guess you spent the night on a poor girl's bed." "On the contrary," the woman replied, touching Isabel's cheek briefly. "I think your bed did more for my soul than any cushion in a great house." The day passed in a peculiar rhythm. Isabel went back and forth between her duties in the main house and her room, inventing small errands to justify her movements. Each time she returned, she expected to find the woman in distress, but she was always seated calmly, sometimes humming a tune she could not fully remember, sometimes gazing out the tiny window at the patch of sky, as if waiting for it to speak. By late afternoon, Isabel's nerves were stretched thin. She knew this situation could not last. A solution had to be found. The priest might bring news. The lady might recall a crucial detail. Something would change. It was impossible to remain suspended like this, between charity and danger. The sun dipped lower, casting longer shadows in the courtyard. People began to return from their day's work. Pots clanged in kitchens, doors opened and closed. Isabel and the older woman shared another simple meal, speaking in soft tones about small things. The woman confessed that she liked the sound of children playing, though she could not remember if she had ever had any of her own. Isabel listened and answered, hiding her own fatigue. Then, just as the sky outside the window began to turn from bright to muted, a different sound reached them. It was the sound of wheels on cobblestones, not the uneven rattle of common carts, but a smoother, heavier roll, accompanied by the clatter of hooves and the low murmur of many voices. The noise did not pass by. It slowed. It stopped. Isabel's heart climbed into her throat. She rose and went to the window. From her limited view, she could see only the upper corners of buildings and a sliver of the street beyond the courtyard gate. But she could hear clearly. People in the street were exclaiming, their voices tinged with surprise and awe. "Carriages," someone whispered near the stairwell. "Fine ones. Look at that crest. Who would bring such carriages here?" another asked. "This is no place for grand folk." Bootsteps sounded in the corridor outside Isabel's door, accompanied by the rustle of better cloth than anyone in the house usually wore. There was a knock, firm and commanding, that made the thin wood tremble. A moment later, a deep male voice spoke, clear and authoritative, each word leaving no doubt of the rank behind it. "We are searching for a missing noble lady," he announced. "We have reason to believe she is in this house and in this room." The knock came again, sharper this time, making the older woman flinch. "Isabel," she whispered, gripping the edge of the bed. "What is that?" "I do not know," Isabel answered, though she had a dreadful guess. She swallowed, smoothed her skirt with trembling hands, and went to the door. "Yes," she called. "Open," the voice said, "by order of the Duke of Cordoba." The name ran through her like cold water. She froze, hand on the latch. Duke of Cordoba. The word Cordoba, which had fallen from the older lady's lips like a fragment of a dream, now stood outside her door in the shape of power. "Isabel," the woman said again, more anxious now. "It is all right," Isabel murmured, though her heart disagreed. "I will open." She drew in a breath and lifted the latch. The door swung inward. The small room filled at once with the presence of people who did not belong to such a poor space. Two men in dark livery stepped in first, their posture straight, eyes sweeping the room in a quick, practiced way. Behind them, in the doorway, stood a taller figure who did not move at once. The corridor outside was crowded with curious neighbors, faces pressing close, only to be held back by a firm arm from someone in fine dress. The taller man stepped forward at last. He was not old, perhaps in his early 30s, but there was something in his gaze that made him appear older than his years. His hair was dark, his jaw clean-shaven, his clothes of the finest cut, though in muted colors. Nothing about him was extravagant. He did not need extravagance. Authority rested on his shoulders like a natural garment. His eyes went first to the older woman on the bed. For a heartbeat, all the sharpness left his face. Something raw flashed through his features, something like hope and fear colliding. He took a step closer without seeming to mean to. "Mother," he said, the word escaping him before he could command it. The woman's hands, which had been clutching the blanket, stilled. She looked at him, frowning slightly, as if he were a figure emerging from fog. "Alejandro," she breathed. The room seemed to fold inward around that name. Isabel glanced from one to the other, her mind racing. Duke, Cordoba, Alejandro, mother. It arranged itself into an answer that made her feel suddenly very small. "You know him?" Isabel asked softly, not sure if she was allowed to speak. The older woman's eyes filled with tears. "I do not remember everything," she said to Isabel, as if she needed to justify herself. "But this face, I have seen it many times. Once it was smaller, now it is harder." Alejandro crossed the floor in 3 strides. The servants in livery moved aside automatically, their expressions carefully blank. He knelt beside the bed without looking at them, his attention entirely on the silver-haired woman. "Mother," he repeated, more quietly now. "It is I. Alejandro, you have been gone for months. Do you understand? We have searched everywhere." She reached out and touched his cheek with hesitant fingers, as if checking whether he was real. "My son," she said, the words slow but sure. "You were so angry when I left. Or was that only a dream?" He drew in a sharp breath. "You left without a word," he answered. "No farewell, no explanation. We had no dream, only fear." Her fingers dropped. "I do not remember leaving," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I only remember walking, and then I was lost." Isabel took a small step back, feeling as though she had intruded into a scene she was not meant to see. Yet the room was hers, the bed was hers. The water in the jug had been carried by her hands. That thought steadied her a little. One of the liveried men, the older of the two, cleared his throat softly. "Your Excellency," he began in a respectful tone, "the men outside say the neighbors spoke of a girl who brought her grace here yesterday. They pointed us to this door. This must be she." Alejandro turned his head then, his gaze falling on Isabel for the first time. His eyes were dark, like his mother's, but without her softness. They were the eyes of a man used to being obeyed, used to measuring others quickly. They swept over her plain dress, her worn shoes, the basket in the corner, the narrow bed now cradling a duchess. "You are the one who found her?" he asked. His voice was neither warm nor cold. It was flat, controlled, as if there was a wall behind it. Isabel swallowed and inclined her head. "Yes, Your Excellency," she said. "Yesterday, in a side street. 2 men were urging her to go with them. She seemed afraid. I thought they might not be what they claimed." "We do not know what they claimed," Alejandro said. "You did not ask?" "I did," she replied. "They said they were sent by her family. They would not name that family. When I urged them to take her to the chapel, they refused. That made me uneasy, so I interfered." The younger liveried man made a small sound under his breath, but did not speak. "You brought her here," Alejandro said. "Yes, Your Excellency," Isabel answered. "I live in this room." The priest did not know who she was. He said he would ask among the clergy. Until then, he thought it wise that she rest somewhere quiet. This was the only place I had to offer. Alejandro looked around again, taking in the smallness, the roughness, the single chair. His gaze returned to his mother's jewels, still gleaming at her throat and ears and wrists. Then back to Isabel. "You did not think to inform the authorities?" he asked. "I am nobody, Excellency," she said honestly. "I did not know whom to inform. I feared the wrong people might take her away if I chose poorly. Here, at least, I could watch her myself." His jaw tightened at that. "You see much and trust little," he said. "She trusted me," Isabel replied, before she could stop herself, nodding toward the older woman. That was enough. There was a small silence. The neighbors in the corridor shifted, listening with open curiosity. The older liveried man glanced uneasily at the crowd. "Your Excellency," he murmured. "Perhaps we should remove Her Grace from this place. The air is close. The people—" Alejandro rose slowly from his kneeling position, his hand resting for a moment on the edge of the bed. He looked down at his mother. "Can you stand?" he asked her. "We will take you home." "Home," she repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, home. You will not be angry if I do not remember all the rooms." "I will be grateful that you are in them," he said simply. She smiled at that, faint and bewildered but pleased. When she tried to stand, her legs shook. She reached out, and it was not Alejandro's hand she found, but Isabel's. Her fingers closed around the girl's, without hesitation. "Do not leave me," she murmured. Alejandro's gaze flicked to their joined hands. "Mother, you are safe now," he said. "My men will assist you. This girl has done her part." The older woman's grip tightened. "No," she said unexpectedly, her voice gaining strength. "She must come. She is the only familiar thing in this confusion. Everyone else's faces shift, hers stays still." "I cannot go with you," Isabel began, startled. "I have work. I serve in the house through the courtyard. My mistress—" "You will obey," the older woman said, her tone suddenly that of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You will come with me. I do not wish to be separated from you yet." "Alejandro, tell her." Alejandro studied her for a long moment. The neighbors were whispering now, repeating the word mother, letting it grow into duchess, into titles they had only ever spoken in awe. Somewhere in the corridor, a child tried to peer between legs and was pulled back by a scolding parent. "Everyone, return to your own rooms," the older liveried man called out. "The matter is under control. This is ducal business." The phrase ducal business stirred the crowd even more, but they began to move, drawn back by the firmness in his tone and the chill in Alejandro's eyes. The corridor slowly cleared, leaving only a few house residents lingering at a respectful distance. Alejandro turned back to Isabel. "What is your full name?" he asked. "Isabel Martin, Excellency," she said. "I was born here in Seville." "You have parents?" "My father died when I was a child," she replied. "My mother 2 years ago. I have only my work." "And this work," he said slowly, "is in the house that shares this courtyard?" "Yes," she said. "I am a servant there. The room I rent is separate by agreement. It is mine, as much as anything can be." He nodded once, as if storing the information. Then he looked again at his mother, whose hand still clung to Isabel's. "You insist she comes?" he asked the older woman. "Yes," she answered simply. "Without her, I feel I might float away." He exhaled through his nose, a small sign of strain quickly checked. "Very well," he said. "You will come with us, Isabel Martin." "Your Excellency," she protested, her heart racing. "My mistress—" "I will send word," he interrupted. If she chooses to dismiss you for obeying the Duke of Cordoba, I will consider it my concern, not yours. This is not a request. My mother's well-being demands it. His tone allowed no space for argument. It was like a door closing softly but firmly. Isabel looked at the older woman. The plea in those eyes finished what the Duke's command had begun. She nodded slowly. "As you wish, Excellency," she said. "I will come." "Gather what you need," Alejandro said. "We do not have time to waste, but you will not return here tonight." The words struck her with sudden force. Not return tonight. Perhaps not at all. She moved quickly, almost on instinct, taking a small cloth bundle from the chest and filling it with her few belongings. A second dress, a worn shawl, a comb, the small wooden box that had been her mother's. She hesitated over a folded scrap of paper containing her mother's handwriting, then tucked it carefully into the box. She felt the eyes of the ducal men on her as she did this, measuring what a life amounted to in a poor girl's corner. It made her cheeks burn, but she kept her movements steady. When she finished, she turned back to the bed. "I am ready," she said quietly. Alejandro nodded. "Then let us go." The older liveried man stepped forward to help the Duchess stand, but she brushed his hand aside and reached for Isabel instead. "Walk beside me," she said. Isabel slipped her arm around the woman's shoulders, offering support. She was surprised by how light she felt, how fragile, like a bird that had flown too long without rest. They left the small room together. In the corridor, though most had dispersed, some faces still peeked from half-open doors. Isabel heard her name whispered, heard guesses thrown like pebbles. "Is that the Duke? Look at his coat." "The older lady? Did you see her jewels? She must be someone." "Isabel, what have you become tangled in?" She kept her eyes ahead, focusing on guiding the older woman. At the end of the corridor, the house's owner stood wringing his hands, bowing repeatedly. "Your Excellency," he stammered, "had I known such a distinguished guest was in my humble house—" "It is regrettable you did not," Alejandro said curtly. "See that my men have passage for the carriage, and send someone at once to the house in your courtyard to inform the mistress that her servant, Isabel Martin, has been requisitioned by the Duke. She may send a message after us if she wishes to object." The owner's eyes widened. "No objection, Your Excellency, none at all. It is an honor." He hurried off, almost tripping over his own feet. The younger liveried man moved ahead to clear a path through the courtyard where more people had gathered. The Duke and his mother, with Isabel between them, followed. In the courtyard, the older woman paused, staring up at the patch of sky above. "It is smaller here," she remarked. "It will be larger at home," Alejandro said. "We have open courtyards. Water," she added softly. "And trees." "Yes, mother," he replied. "And trees." The sight of the carriages just outside the gate made Isabel stop for a heartbeat. She had seen such vehicles before, rolling past her on the main streets, but never so close. They were polished with discreet crests on the doors. The horses were sleek, their harnesses bright. "Come," Alejandro said, gesturing toward the nearest one. "Mother, you will ride with me. Isabel, you will sit beside her." Isabel obeyed, helping the older woman up the small step, and then following. The interior was lined with soft cushions. She sank onto the seat awkwardly, clutching her cloth bundle in her lap, afraid to let it touch anything. Alejandro sat opposite them, his posture straight despite the limited space. When the door closed, the sounds of the street grew muffled, replaced by the creak of the carriage and the faint jingle of harness. They began to move. The older woman looked around, touching the window frame with her fingers. "This feels familiar," she murmured. "Have I ridden in this before?" "Many times," Alejandro said. "You always complained that the springs were too stiff." She laughed softly at that, then frowned. "Did I truly? I do not remember my own complaints. That should be a mercy for others." Isabel watched them, feeling strangely like an intruder and a witness at once. She spoke only when directly addressed. "What did the men look like?" Alejandro asked suddenly, his attention snapping back to Isabel. "The ones you found with her." She described them as best she could. The mustache, the restless eyes, their manners, their refusal to name the household, their reluctance to go to the chapel. "They spoke smoothly," she said, as if they were used to persuading people, but their smiles did not match their eyes. They seemed eager to have her away from public view. "You noticed all this," he said, not as praise but as a fact. "It is part of my work, Excellency," she answered. Servants must notice much and be noticed little. Did they mention any name, any direction? Anything you have not yet told me? She hesitated, thinking back. One of them mentioned that her family would be grateful to see her, that if I did not make trouble, all would be well, and perhaps I would be rewarded. I think he meant to tempt me, but it had the opposite effect. You did not wish a reward, he asked. Not from men I did not trust, she replied, and not at the cost of sending her away against her will. His gaze held her for a moment. You understand that some will say you kept her here to gain more than a reward, he said. I understand that people say many things, she said quietly. They will not change what happened. His mother reached across then and patted Isabel's hand. Do not let him frighten you, she said. He sounds like his father when he is like this. Too many numbers in his head, not enough kindness on his tongue, but his heart is not as cold as it seems. Mother, Alejandro said, a hint of exasperation in his voice. It is true, she insisted. You grind yourself like wheat. You forget you are not a mill. She turned back to Isabel. Do not tremble whenever he speaks. He is not a god. He is only a man who has been given too many keys. Isabel bit back a smile, surprised by the Duchess's sudden sharpness. Alejandro's lips tightened, but she thought she saw a flicker of reluctant amusement in his eyes. The journey continued. The city's sounds changed as they left the narrow inner streets and moved toward wider avenues. Isabel peered out once and saw buildings growing grander, the crowds thinner. Then, after some time, the city thinned as well, replaced by more open roads. You are taking her to Cordoba itself? Isabel asked before she could stop herself. So far. The ducal estate, Alejandro corrected. It is not in the heart of the city, but near enough. She will be cared for there. And I? Isabel asked softly. You will answer the questions that need answering, he said. Until I am satisfied I understand everything that has happened. Then I may return? She pressed. Let us first see whether my mother wishes you to, he said. Her comfort will be weighed along with other matters. The answer settled like a stone in her stomach. She lowered her eyes to her hands, twisting the cloth of her bundle. When she dared look up again, the view had changed. The carriage was passing through large gates into a wide courtyard. Walls of pale stone rose on three sides, with windows in long rows. It was not the largest estate in the world, perhaps, but to Isabel it seemed immense. There were people everywhere, men in livery, women in simple gowns, others in finer clothing. They turned to watch as the carriages rolled in. The carriage stopped. The door opened. Alejandro stepped out first, then turned and held out his hand for his mother. I will need both, she said, looking from him to Isabel. One for balance, one for comfort. He offered his right. Isabel, flushing, offered her left. Together they helped the older woman down. As her feet touched the ground, a murmur swept through the gathered staff. Her Grace, the Duchess, she has returned. Praise be. Isabel stood slightly behind her, feeling eyes on her from every side. She heard the whispers begin almost at once. Who is the girl? She is no cousin. Look at her dress. She came in the Duke's carriage. Did you see? Alejandro ignored the murmurs. My mother has returned, he said, his voice carrying clearly. She is tired, and not fully herself. She will be treated with the utmost gentleness. Anyone who disturbs her peace will answer to me. There was a chorus of, Yes, Your Excellency, and bows and curtsies. Then a new voice spoke from the steps of the main entrance, smooth and warm, with a touch of practiced charm. Cousin, it called. We are all relieved. We had begun to fear the worst. Isabel glanced up. A man slightly younger than Alejandro was descending the steps. His hair was lighter, his smile quick, his eyes bright and watching. He moved with easy grace, as if the courtyard were a stage and he the favorite actor. Esteban, Alejandro said. Don Esteban, the man corrected with a laugh. You forget my dignity when you are anxious, but I will forgive you today. He reached the bottom of the steps and bowed deeply before the Duchess. Your Grace, you have been sorely missed. She peered at him, frowning faintly. You are familiar, she said slowly. Who are you? His smile did not falter. Your nephew, Don Esteban de Alarcón, he said. I have had the honor of assisting your son in estate matters during your unfortunate absence. Ah, she said vaguely. Yes, the one who always speaks of numbers. A flicker crossed his face, gone as quickly as it came. He straightened and turned to Isabel, as if only now noticing her. "And who is this?" he asked lightly. Alejandro answered before she could. "The girl who found my mother," he said. "She brought her to shelter and sent word to the clergy. We owe her thanks. Until matters are clarified, she will remain here." Isabel felt herself flush again under Esteban's open inspection. He let his gaze travel from her head to her shoes and back up, as if weighing every thread. "So we do," he said, his tone smooth but carrying a note Isabel could not quite name. How fortunate that her grace fell into such capable hands, and not into others. His eyes flickered briefly toward the servants, as if implying danger lurking in every poor face. Then they settled back on Isabel with a hint of amusement. "How you must be very brave, señorita." "Isabel Martin," she supplied, forcing herself to stand straight. "Señorita Martin," he repeated, adding a small flourish to the name. "Welcome to Córdoba. I am sure your time here will be enlightening." Isabel could not tell whether he meant it kindly or not. She settled for a nod. Another voice called from above. "Your Excellency." They all looked up. A woman was standing halfway down the steps, her dress elegant but not ostentatious, her posture impeccable. Her features were fine, her eyes clear. She did not smile, but her expression was composed. "Doña Inés," Alejandro said. "News spread quickly," she said, descending the remaining steps. "I could hardly remain inside when I heard that her grace had returned." She curtsied before the Duchess. "My lady, it rejoices me to see you." "And who are you?" the older woman asked, weary now from so many new faces. "Inés de Valderrama," she replied, "a friend of the family." Her glance slid briefly toward Alejandro when she said friend, then away. Isabel noticed that small moment and filed it somewhere in the back of her mind. Inés turned to Isabel next, her gaze cooler, more measured than Esteban's open curiosity. "And this?" she asked Alejandro. "The girl responsible for my mother's presence here instead of some unknown ditch," he said. "We owe her a debt." "How admirable," Inés said, though her tone carried no warmth. "The courage of the lower classes always touches me." She inclined her head slightly toward Isabel. "You must feel very out of place, child. I hope our staff will make your stay bearable." "Thank you, Señora," Isabel said, sensing that any other answer would be mistake. Alejandro lifted his hand slightly, and the murmurs around them quieted again. "Enough greetings for now," he said. "My mother is tired. She will be taken to her rooms. Isabel will accompany her. I want an attendant there as well, someone discreet and patient." One of the older women in the staff stepped forward and curtsied deeply. "I will see to it, Your Excellency." "Good," he said. He looked at his mother. "Can you walk a little further?" "If Isabel is beside me," she replied. "Then Isabel will be beside you," he said, as if settling a question of furniture placement rather than overturning a servant's life. They moved toward the entrance, the Duchess in the middle, Isabel at her side, Alejandro walking slightly ahead, Esteban and Inés following at a polite distance. Servants parted before them like water. Inside, the coolness of the stone halls pressed against Isabel's skin. It smelled faintly of wax and linen, and something else she could not name. A scent of wealth and order. The ceilings arched higher than any room she had ever seen. Her eyes darted from one thing to another, trying to take it all in. But there was too much. "Do not stare," came a soft voice near her ear. She turned her head slightly. It was Doña Inés, walking close enough to be heard, but not to disturb the Duchess. "They will take it as a sign of greed," Inés added. "Better to keep your eyes low, at least for now." Isabel bit the inside of her cheek and lowered her gaze. "Thank you for the advice," she murmured. "It is not advice," Inés said. "It is a warning. This house is full of eyes. Some watch out of habit, others out of dislike." "Dislike of whom?" Isabel asked before she could stop herself. "Of anything that does not fit," Inés replied. "That includes you." She moved ahead then, leaving Isabel with that weight. They reached a wide staircase. The Duchess's legs faltered again. "I do not remember this climb," she said. "You complained of it often," Alejandro said. "Now you will have help." Two women from the staff came forward to assist, but again the Duchess leaned more on Isabel than on them. Isabel's arm ached slightly from the effort, but she did not pull away. At the top of the stairs, they turned down a quieter corridor. The noise from the entrance hall faded. The doors here were fewer, the walls adorned with paintings. Isabel caught glimpses of faces, landscapes, horses, but did not linger. At last they stopped before a large door. Alejandro opened it himself. Inside was a spacious room with a large bed, chairs, a table by the window. It was unmistakably the chamber of someone important. "Home," the Duchess said softly, stepping inside. "This I remember." "Then let it remember you," Alejandro said. The staff arranged themselves along the walls, waiting for orders. Alejandro turned to Isabel. "You will stay here," he said, "at least for now. You will assist my mother as you have done, and you will answer any questions I have. You will not wander the house without permission. If you attempt to leave without my knowledge, do not expect hospitality." Isabel nodded, feeling the walls of the room close around her, even though they were far apart. "I understand, Excellency," she said. Esteban, standing near the doorway, cleared his throat. "Cousin," he said lightly, "surely the girl will need some supervision. We do not know who sent her, or whether those men she speaks of were acting alone. It would be unfortunate if we welcomed a wolf while chasing shadows." Alejandro's gaze hardened. "You imply much," he said. "Do you have any reason besides your imagination to suspect her?" "No," Esteban said at once. "I only think of your safety, our safety. The house has enemies, as you well know. They may see an opportunity in your joy." Inez added in a measured tone, "It is not unreasonable, Your Excellency, to consider that Her Grace's disappearance and sudden return may be connected to interests we do not yet see. The girl may be exactly as she appears, or she may not. Caution is not an insult, it is prudence." Alejandro looked at Isabel again. In his eyes now there was not only doubt, but conflict. Gratitude pulled one way, suspicion another. "You hear them," he said, "and they are not wholly wrong. Until we know more, you are both guest and suspect in this house. You will be treated with basic respect, but you will not mistake your position. Do you accept this?" "What choice do I have?" Isabel asked quietly. He did not answer that. Instead, he turned to the older woman. "Mother, you must rest," he said. "I will come later with the physician. For now, Isabel will stay with you." "I should like that," she said. "But do not be too hard on her, Alejandro. She did what you forgot how to do." "What is that?" he asked. "Trust a stranger," she replied simply. He paused, something flickering in his face, then inclined his head. "Rest," he said again, and left the room. One by one, the others followed. The staff, after a few more instructions, withdrew. Esteban was the last at the door. He lingered, looking back at Isabel, who stood beside the bed, feeling very small under the high ceiling. "Welcome to our cage, little bird," he said softly, his smile almost kind. "Some cages are gilded, but they are cages all the same." She stiffened. "I did not ask to enter it," she replied. "No," he agreed. "That is what makes it interesting." His smile widened by a fraction. Then he stepped out and closed the door. In the quiet that followed, Isabel helped the Duchess lie down, arranged her pillows, and took the small chair near the bed. Outside the door, footsteps faded. Further down the corridor, unseen by her, Don Esteban fell into step beside Doña Inés. "He keeps her close," he murmured. Inés's lips curved faintly. "Which gives us time to decide what use to make of her," she said. Don Esteban smiled to himself, already planning how to turn the Duke's decision against the bewildered girl from Seville. The first morning in the palace began with a knock that was too polite to be kind. Isabel blinked awake in the small antechamber that had been arranged for her beside the Duchess's bedchamber. It was not like her old room. It was larger, with a narrow bed and a chest, a washstand, even a rug. Yet the walls felt closer because she had not chosen them. The knock came again. She sat up quickly. "Yes?" she called. A woman in a plain grey dress opened the door. She was in her middle years, with a thin mouth and sharp eyes. Her posture said she was used to organizing others. "I am Matilda," she said. "I oversee the staff on this floor. The Duke has instructed that you will attend Her Grace upon rising." Her gaze swept Isabel from head to toe. "You are not dressed yet." "I just woke," Isabel answered. "I did not know the hour." "In this house, we do not wait for the sun to remind us," Matilda said. "Dress quickly. Her Grace stirs. She asks for the girl. Isabel's heart softened a little at that. I will come, she said. Matilda did not leave. She stood and watched as Isabel rose and pulled on the plain gown that had been laid out for her the previous night. It was not fine, but it was cleaner and better made than anything she had owned before. Still, standing under Matilda's critical gaze, she felt as clumsy as a child. You may wash at the basin, Matilda said, but do not drip on the floor. The rugs are not easily replaced. Yes, Isabel murmured. When she had finished, Matilda turned and led the way into the Duchess's chamber. The room was softly lit, the curtains half drawn. Doña Mercedes lay on the large bed, propped up on pillows, her hair looser now, the silver strands softer around her face. At the sight of Isabel, she smiled. There you are, she said. I dreamed I was alone in a house that did not know me. It is a relief to open my eyes and find at least one familiar person. Isabel came closer. Good morning, madam, she said. How do you feel? Like a book someone has dropped and picked up too many times, the Duchess said. Pages are missing. Others are out of order. But I am still bound, it seems. Matilda made a faint, disapproving sound, as if the comparison were improper. Her Grace must not excite herself with fanciful talk, she said. The physician will come later. For now, we must keep to the routine. And what is the routine? The Duchess asked, glancing at Isabel. Do you know? No, madam, Isabel admitted. I have never been in a house like this. Matilda stepped in. Her Grace is bathed and dressed. She takes broth and bread. She rests. Later she may see the Duke. That is all. You will assist with what I indicate, and you will mind your tongue. Yes, Isabel said, of course. The morning passed in a strange dance. Matilda and another maid moved efficiently, washing and dressing the Duchess, arranging her hair, changing linens. Isabel helped in small ways, handing cloths, holding a comb, smoothing the gown. Whenever the Duchess grew confused or wary, her eyes sought Isabel's face. You do not move like the others, she remarked once, as Matilda fastened the last button at her back. How do they move? Isabel asked. Like people who know they belong here, the Duchess said. You move as if you are afraid the floor will open and swallow you. Isabel stiffened, then forced a small laugh. Perhaps it will grow used to me, she said. Matilda cut in. Her Grace should not be burdened with such talk. Isabel, you will sit over there and attend quietly. She pointed to a low chair near the window. Isabel obeyed. The message was clear, helpful, but not part of the household. Tolerated, but watched. Later, when trays arrived with food, the servants carrying them exchanged glances at the sight of Isabel. Is that the girl? One whispered, not as softly as he thought. She brought her Grace back, another answered. They say she is under suspicion. Suspicion of what? The first asked. Who knows? People disappear, they appear again, and there is always a story behind it. Be careful what you say. Their eyes flicked to Isabel and away. She kept her gaze on the Duchess's spoon, steadying her hand when it wavered. By midday, Alejandro came. His arrival did not need an announcement. The air changed. The servants in the room straightened. Matilda's mouth tightened into a line of greater respect. The Duchess looked toward the door as if she felt him. Good day, mother, he said, coming to her bedside. Is it? She asked. It is day, yes. Whether it is good, you must decide. You are the one with ledgers. He smiled faintly. If the ledger of this day begins with your presence, it is already less poor than the day before. Her eyes softened. You should have said such things more often when I was younger, she said. Perhaps I would not have run away. You did not run, mother, he said. You wandered. That sounds less romantic, she remarked, but perhaps more honest. He glanced around the room then, taking in Matilda, the other maid, and Isabel on her low chair. His gaze lingered on Isabel a moment longer. Matilda, he said, you may leave us for a while. You too, Anna. I wish to speak with my mother, and with Isabel alone. Matilda frowned slightly. Your Excellency. Her Grace tires easily. Perhaps another time would be better. That was not a suggestion, Alejandro said. Yes, Your Excellency, she replied quickly. She and the other maid curtsied and withdrew, closing the door behind them. The room felt larger and smaller at once. Alejandro pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, facing his mother. How is your head? He asked. Confused, she answered frankly. But less heavy than yesterday. I sleep better under my own roof. I remember some things, not all. He nodded. We will bring the physician. We will speak with pastors. We will do what we can. For now, let us begin with what you do recall. He looked toward Isabel. And what she recalls. Isabel shifted in her seat. Excellency, she said, I have told you already what happened in Seville. And you will tell me again, he replied, until I am certain there is nothing more you have forgotten. Memory is like a tapestry. Each time it is touched, a new thread may show. The Duchess laughed softly. For you have been thinking of that line, have you not? She said. It sounds rehearsed. If it comforts you to tease me, mother, then I will not protest, he said, but I will still ask. He turned to Isabel and gestured lightly. Begin. So she did. She described the alley, the men, their manner, the Duchess's confusion, the chapel, the priest, the night in her room. Her voice was steady, though her hands twisted in her lap. Did they touch you, these men? Alejandro asked his mother when Isabel finished. Not roughly, she said, but their words pressed harder than hands. They wanted me to go somewhere I did not wish to go. I felt it, even if I did not understand why. Do you remember ever seeing them before? He asked. She closed her eyes. Faces blur, she said. Yours does not. Hers does not. She nodded toward Isabel. Theirs are like smudges on a page. He accepted that with a slight incline of his head. And in the days before you left the palace, he asked gently, what do you remember? She frowned, concentrating. Voices, she said. Too many. People speaking over me, asking me to sign things, telling me I was growing forgetful, that it would be better if I let others decide. I walked through my own house and felt like a guest. I felt small. Her hand trembled. Isabel reached out and covered it without thinking. The Duchess squeezed her fingers gratefully. Who asked you to sign? Alejandro's voice had lost its gentleness now. It was sharper. She hesitated. You sometimes, she said. But that was different. You have always asked. Others insisted. Who? He pressed. Your father's kin, she said. Your cousin, the one who smiles too quickly. Esteban. Alejandro's jaw clenched. What did he want you to sign? Papers, she said vaguely. About the estate. About if I should fall ill. He said it was prudent. He said you had so much to do, you needed help. I did not like how he spoke of you, as if you were not in the room. One day, after a great many words, I felt trapped. I walked out. I thought I would go to someone who would explain it all clearly. I do not remember if I found them. Only the streets, and then the alley, and then her. She squeezed Isabel's hand again. Alejandro sat very still. Why did you not tell me this when it began? He asked softly. I did, she said just as softly. You were busy. You told me not to worry. You trust Esteban. He is good with numbers. You are good with people who are good with numbers. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. I remember, he admitted. I did not see what you saw. You are seeing it now, she said. He looked at Isabel once more. You hear? He asked. Do you understand why I must question you, when I know there are people under this roof who would very much like my mother to stay confused? Yes, she said. I understand. Good, he replied. His tone softened slightly. Tell me this then. When you found her, did you ever consider keeping silent about the jewels she wore? The question stung, though she had expected it. No, she said. I do not care for jewels. They look well on others. On my hands they would look like borrowed glory that did not fit. I only thought of keeping her safe. His eyes searched her face for a long moment. Very well, he said at last. For now, I will trust that answer. For now, she repeated softly to herself. He rose. I will speak with Esteban, he said to his mother, and with others. Rest. Do not let their faces trouble you in your dreams. Let them trouble mine. When he left, Isabel exhaled. The Duchess looked at her with a mixture of fondness and concern. You are pale, she said. Did he frighten you? He has the power to do so, Isabel admitted, but not as much as the men in the alley did. His questions are sharp, but his eyes, I think they are not cruel. They are not, the Duchess agreed, but they can be blind when he wishes not to see. You must not let him make you smaller than you are. I am already very small, Isabel said. It is not a crime to be small, the Duchess replied. It is only a crime to believe that makes you less a person. The days that followed did not feel like days to Isabel. They felt like steps across a floor she did not yet know, always careful, always watched. She rose early, helped Matilda and the other maids with the Duchess, sat by the bed when the older woman grew tired, walked with her in the inner courtyard when she felt strong enough. She answered questions when Alejandro came. Always the same events, always the same words. She ate in a small side room near the Duchess's chamber, never in the servants' hall, never in the formal dining room. She lived between worlds, belonging to neither. The servants spoke about her when they thought she did not hear. She sleeps near her grace, one whispered. In an antechamber, like a trusted attendant, but she has no title. The Duke questions her every day, another said. He must suspect something. Or he is enchanted, a third suggested with a sly tone. Men are not so different even when they are dukes. Do not be foolish, Matilda snapped when she overheard that. He is not enchanted. He is cautious, and she— Her voice lowered. She is a complication. We have enough of those. Isabel pretended not to hear, but the words settled in her like stones. When she passed through the servants' corridors, some greeted her hesitantly. Others did not greet her at all, turning their backs. She quickly learned which faces softened at the sight of her, and which hardened. Once, in the late afternoon, when the Duchess slept and Matilda had gone to consult the steward, Isabel slipped into the corridor for a breath of air. As she walked, she heard laughter from an open doorway. Come, do not be so cruel, a woman's voice said. I'm only speaking truth, another replied. Did you see her shoes? Worn as if she had walked from Seville to Cordoba on foot. She might have, a man added, to bring the Duchess back herself and collect a reward. Reward, the second woman said with a scoff. If she wished a reward, she would have made herself known sooner. No, she waited. She kept the Duchess in her room. I heard the mistress of that poor house say so. Why so long? What did she hope to gain? Isabel's throat tightened. She stepped away from the doorway, but her skirt rustled. The voices stopped. A moment later, a young maid appeared in the opening. Her eyes widened when she saw Isabel. Oh, she said. We were only speaking truth? Isabel asked quietly. The maid flushed. Repeating what others say, she admitted. We meant no harm. Words do harm whether you mean it or not, Isabel replied. I hope you remember that when you choose them. She walked away before they could answer. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall where others might see. The smallest kindness felt precious in that atmosphere. A kitchen boy who slipped her an extra piece of bread with a shy smile, an older maid who showed her where the linen closets were and whispered, Do not mind them. People fear what they do not understand. They fear losing their place. Yet even these kindnesses could not fully balance the weight of suspicion. Alejandro's questions became more pointed. He asked about small details now. Had she noticed if the men in the alley wore rings? Did they speak with the accent of Seville or somewhere else? Did they mention any sum of money? No, she said again and again. They spoke of gratitude, not coins. Their words were like honey that had been left in the sun too long. Too sweet, but spoiled. He listened, brow furrowed. If they were common thieves, they would have taken the jewels at once, he said. Yet they did not. That suggests they had a different purpose. To carry her somewhere and let others decide what to take, Isabel suggested. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps they were sent by someone within these walls who wished things done in shadow. You think someone here would wish harm to your mother? She asked. I think, he answered slowly, that estates as large as this one breed desires as weeds grow in a garden. There are always those who wish for more water. He did not name anyone. He did not have to. Isabel thought of Esteban's bright eyes and Inez's smooth, measured words. She saw them often now. Esteban visited the Duchess frequently, always with a smile, always with a remark about how much better she looked. The Duchess tolerated him, sometimes frowning when she could not place him. You speak too quickly, she told him once. Your words chase each other, and I cannot catch any. He laughed, as if it were a compliment. Then I shall speak more slowly, Aunt, he said, until they line up nicely for you. He rarely addressed Isabel directly, but his gaze flicked to her often. Once, as he left the room, he paused beside her chair. "You must be tired," he said softly. "Such a heavy burden, being the only person Her Grace fully trusts." "It is not a burden," she replied. "It is a responsibility." "A noble word," he said. "A dangerous one in the wrong hands." He smiled. "Take care that others do not decide your hands are wrong." Doña Inés came less often, but when she did, she watched everything. She asked the Duchess gentle questions about her health, about her comfort, about her memories. Then, when the older woman drifted, she turned to Isabel. "And you, Isabel," she said one afternoon. "How do you find palace life?" "Confusing," Isabel answered honestly. "It is confusing for all of us," Inés said. "So many duties, so many loyalties. One must always be careful where one steps. Some floors have traps." "There are no traps in my old room," Isabel said. "Only a crack near the corner." Inés smiled faintly. "You really are from another world," she said. "Remember that. This is not Seville's back streets. Here, a misstep may not break your ankle, but it can break your future." "I did not come here to seek a future," Isabel said. "I came because I was told." "By a ducal command and an old woman's grasp," Inés agreed. "Those are not easy to refuse." Her eyes sharpened. "Still, you are here now. And as Esteban would say, where there is confusion, there is opportunity." "I do not wish opportunity," Isabel said. "I only wish justice." "Ah," Inés said softly, "another dangerous word." The storm broke a week later. It was a cool morning. The Duchess had slept poorly, waking from dreams she could not fully describe. "I was in a room full of people," she said, dabbing her eyes. "They spoke of me as if I were furniture. Move her here, put her there, cover that stain." I wanted to shout that I could hear them, but no sound came. Isabel soothed her as best she could. "You are not furniture," she said. "You are the one who chooses where others stand." "Not any more," the Duchess replied. "Now they choose where to put me. Perhaps that is why I left." Later, Matilda came with fresh linens and a serious expression. "When you have a moment," she said to Isabel, "the steward wishes to see you in the small drawing room near the stairs." "Am I to go now?" Isabel asked. "The physician will sit with Her Grace for a while," Matilda said. "Go. It is not wise to keep the steward waiting." Isabel smoothed her gown and went. The small drawing room was on the same floor, not far from the main staircase. It was sparsely furnished with a table and a few chairs. When she entered, the steward was there, along with two other servants. To her surprise, Alejandro was present as well, standing by the window. He turned when she entered. His face was serious, more closed than she had seen it. "You sent for me, Excellency?" she asked. "I did," he said. "Come." She stepped forward. Her eyes fell on the table. On it lay a delicate brooch, shaped like a flower, its petals formed of pale stones. It caught the light in small flashes. She recognized it. She had seen it in the Duchess's jewelry box when Matilda and the other maid had opened it to choose adornments. The Duchess had spoken of it with a soft smile. "This," she had said, touching it, "this was given to me when you were born, Alejandro. It is a symbol of beginnings." Now it lay alone on the table, like evidence. The steward cleared his throat. "This brooch," he said, "was discovered this morning in a place it should not have been." "Where?" Isabel asked, her voice suddenly dry. "In the small chest in your antechamber," he answered. Her heart stopped, then started again, painfully. "That is not possible," she said. "I have never touched it. I did not even know it had been moved." "The Duchess's jewelry was inventoried yesterday," Alejandro said, his tone controlled. "It was in its place then. This morning Matilda found it missing. We had the staff chambers searched quietly. It was found among your things." "There must be some mistake," Isabel said. "Someone put it there." "That is exactly what it looks like," a voice said from the doorway. Esteban stepped in, hands clasped behind his back, expression sympathetic to the point of insult. "Someone put it there," he repeated. "The question is who? Who had access to both Her Grace's chambers and this antechamber?" Isabel looked at him, then at Alejandro. "Many people have access," she said. "Matilda, the other maids, the physician, yourself, Doña Inés, the servants who bring trays, and yet," Esteban said smoothly, Only one of those people has no established place in this house. Only one appeared out of nowhere with a story that cannot be proven. My story is true, she said, heat rising in her face. I saved her. I brought her to safety. No one denies you brought her, Esteban replied gently. We only question your reasons. Alejandro held up a hand. Enough, he said, his gaze fixed on Isabel. Did you take this brooch? No, she answered at once. I swear it, Excellency. I would never steal from her, not after all she has suffered. Swearing is easy, Esteban murmured. Alejandro's eyes did not leave her face. Were you ever alone in the Duchess's chamber when the jewelry box was open? He asked. Yes, she admitted. For a moment once. Matilda left to fetch something. I remained, but I did not touch anything. Sometimes touching is not necessary, Esteban said. Sometimes looking is enough. A poor girl sees fine jewels, thinks of what they could mean, what they could buy. Don Esteban, Isabel said, trying to keep her voice level. When I saw those jewels, I thought of how heavily they would weigh on a tired neck. Nothing more. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You have a quick tongue, he said. I have a clear conscience, she replied. The steward shifted uncomfortably. Your Excellency, he said to Alejandro, we have done as you asked. We found the brooch. We brought it to you. Now the staff waits to know what this means. Alejandro's expression was unreadable. It means, he said slowly, that someone in this house wishes to convince me that Isabel Martín is a thief. His choice of words gave her a brief flare of hope. Wishes to convince you, she repeated. Then you do not believe it. He did not answer that directly. Belief is a heavy coin, he said. I do not spend it quickly. Appearances, however, cannot be ignored. The brooch was found with your things. That is a fact. There is no point denying it. I'm not denying it was found there, she said. I'm saying I did not put it there. And in a house where truth is often hidden, Esteban said, how are we to separate your words from someone else's? Your Excellency, you must think of the whisper that will spread if nothing is done. The Duke took in a stranger. Soon after, his mother's jewels began to walk away. Alejandro's jaw tightened. I do not need you to tell me what people will whisper, he said. Inez appeared in the doorway then, as if drawn by the scent of conflict. What is this? She asked calmly, taking in the scene. The missing brooch has been found, Esteban told her, in our guest's chest. Inez's brows rose slightly. She looked at the brooch, then at Isabel. That is unfortunate, she said. For everyone. Do you think I took it? Isabel demanded. Inez studied her face. I think it would have been wiser not to be in a position where such a question is necessary, she said. But wisdom often comes late. The Duchess will speak for her, Isabel said desperately. She knows I would not harm her. Alejandro hesitated. Bring my mother, he said to the steward. Or no. Better, we will go to her. I will not drag her through corridors for this. They moved as a group back to the Duchess's chamber. Isabel walked in the middle of them, her head high despite the churning in her stomach. Inside, the Duchess was sitting up, sipping broth. Matilde stood beside her, watching anxiously. When they entered, the older woman set the bowl down. So many faces, she said. It must be serious. What is wrong? Alejandro picked up the brooch from where the steward had placed it on a small tray. Mother, he said, do you recognize this? She smiled faintly. Of course, she said. It is my brooch. You gave it to me when I... No, you did not give it. You were too small. Someone gave it when you were born. It went missing from your jewelry box, he said. It was found in Isabel's chest. The smile vanished. She looked at Isabel in confusion. Is that true? She asked. Did you take it, child? No, Isabel said, her voice breaking a little now. I did not. I did not even know it was gone until this morning. Someone placed it there, I swear it. The Duchess looked from her to Alejandro, to Esteban, to Inez, to Matilde. Faces swam before her. She lifted a trembling hand to her temple. I do not like this, she said. My head hurts when you all look at me like that. We are only seeking truth, Inez said soothingly. No one wishes to hurt you. Then stop pulling at my thoughts, the Duchess snapped. Truth is not a rope to be yanked. She took a breath and looked at Isabel again. You did not take it, she said slowly, as if testing the words. "No, madam," Isabel whispered. "I would sooner cut off my hand than steal from you." The Duchess flinched at that image. "Do not speak of cutting," she said. "This house has seen enough of that. You are honest, that is what my heart says." "And your mind?" Esteban asked softly. "What does that say?" "My mind is a broken clock," she said bitterly. "It ticks when it should be still, and stills when it should tick. Why ask it?" "Because," Inez said gently, "in matters of jewels and trust, the Duke must rely on more than hearts." The Duchess closed her eyes. "I do not remember her taking anything," she said. "I remember her giving. Water, bread, warmth. But when I push further, everything blurs." She pressed her fingers to her temples again. "I am sorry, child. I cannot help you. I cannot even help myself." Tears spilled down Isabel's cheeks now. She wiped them quickly, ashamed. Alejandro stood very straight. He looked at his mother with sorrow, at Isabel with a complexity she could not read, at Esteban and Inez with a hint of cold. "Mother," he said, "no one here wishes to distress you further. We will not press you. Rest." She nodded weakly. He turned to Isabel. "Until this matter is resolved," he said, formally now, "I cannot allow you to move freely in this house. It is not only my mother's safety at stake, but the honor of the household. You will return to your antechamber. You will remain there unless summoned. You will not visit the kitchens or the servants' hall. Your meals will be brought to you. The door will be watched." "You make it sound as if I have already been judged," she said, swallowing hard. "No," he said. "If I had judged you guilty, you would not be confined in comfort. You would be elsewhere. This is an unhappy middle place." "I have lived all my life in the middle place," she said. "Too poor to be safe, too honest to be respected. It seems I have only changed the size of the walls." Something flickered in his eyes again, quickly hidden. "Do not mistake this for punishment," he said. "It is caution." "Caution feels very much like a cage," she replied. "Would you prefer the streets?" Esteban asked softly. "You know what kind of men walk there." "I know," she said. "I know, because I walked them and found your aunt alone among them. I did not leave her there." A silence followed that. Then Alejandro nodded once. "Take her," he said to Matilda. "See that she has what she needs, but nothing more. No one is to visit her without my permission." "Yes, Your Excellency," Matilda said. She approached Isabel and touched her arm, not unkindly but firmly. Isabel allowed herself to be led away. As she left the room, she glanced back at the Duchess. The older woman reached out a hand as if to stop her, but her fingers caught only air. "I am sorry," the Duchess whispered. Isabel heard it, but the door closed before she could answer. The antechamber felt different when she entered it again. The same bed, the same chest, the same small window. Yet now there was a man outside the door, a young guard in simple livery, his posture bored but his presence unmistakable. He nodded to her as she passed. "Orders," he said. "No offense." "None taken," she replied. "You are not the one who doubts me." Left alone, she sat on the bed and buried her face in her hands. For a few minutes she let the tears come freely. Then she forced herself to stop. Crying changed nothing. It only made her eyes puff and her throat ache. Afternoon turned to evening. No one came except a maid who brought her a tray of food and avoided her gaze. Night fell. The sounds of the house grew softer. The guard shifted occasionally outside, his footsteps creaking. Isabel sat in the low chair, staring at the small bit of sky she could see. Fear prickled at the edges of her thoughts, fear of being forgotten, of being blamed, of losing what little name she had. Anger burned at the center. Anger at whoever had placed the brooch, at the ease with which some people could twist truth, at the weakness of her own position. At last, when the candles had burned low, footsteps approached. Not the light tread of a maid or the steady shift of the guard. A firmer stride. The guard's murmur sounded. A deeper voice answered. The door latch moved. Alejandro stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The small space seemed to shrink around his presence. Isabel rose slowly to her feet, her hands clenched at her sides. "You said you would come if I had more to say," she said, her voice low but steady. "I have held my tongue all day. If this night is to destroy me, I will at least use it to tell you a truth your own house is too frightened to speak." Alejandro did not move from the doorway. He watched her as if weighing not only her words, but the way she stood, the way she drew breath. "Then speak," he said. "Tell me what this house has not." Isabel lifted her chin. Her hands still shook, so she clasped them in front of her. "You ask again and again about the alley," she began, "about the men. There is one thing I did not tell you before. Not because I wished to hide it, but because I did not know if it mattered." "All things matter," he said. "Say it." "One of them," she said slowly, "the one with the restless eyes, spoke when he thought I was not listening. He grumbled that if I would only step aside, the cousin at court would be grateful. He said, 'Once the old lady's affairs are settled, we will all be better off. Why must these street girls always poke their noses in?'" Alejandro's expression did not change much, but his attention sharpened. "You are sure of those words?" he asked. "As sure as I am of the floor under my feet," she answered. "At the time, I thought he meant some cousin of hers, in some house I would never see. Now I have seen this house. I have heard people use the same words. Cousin, affairs, better off." His jaw flexed. "You think he spoke of my cousin Esteban?" "I do not know," she replied. "I have no right to accuse him, but I have ears. I heard things here, before anyone thought to watch their tongues around me." "Such as?" he pressed. She took a breath. "The servants speak freely when they forget I am there," she said. "They talk of how Don Esteban took a greater hand in your affairs when your mother vanished. How he told them, 'The house must be prepared for changes. We cannot expect the old ways to last forever.' They talk of papers he had them carry to you, letters he sent, doors he told them to leave open just in case. Servants misinterpret," Alejandro said. "They see pieces and invent the rest." "Then do not rely on servants' whispers," she said. "Rely on your own eyes. You saw the way he spoke of me from the first moment, as if I were a problem that interested him, not because of my soul, but because of what he could do with my presence." "You overestimate your importance," he said. "I know my unimportance very well," she answered. "That is what makes this so clear. Men like him do not notice girls like me unless we can be used." His silence stretched. She pressed on. "And Doña Inés," she said. "She warns me with one hand and tightens the noose with the other. She speaks of traps and flaws that break futures. She says she thinks only of your safety, but every word she whispers makes you look at me as if I hold a knife." "There are no knives in this story," he said sharply. "No," she agreed. "Only words, only papers, only jewels moved from one box to another. Yet the harm they do is real." He glanced toward the closed door, then back at her. "You think the brooch was placed in your chest on their order?" "I think," she said, "that if someone wished to stain me, they chose the easiest ink. I am poor, unknown, without kin. It is simple to say, she wished to profit from the Duchess's confusion. Who would defend me? Only the one whose mind they say is broken." His mouth tightened at that. She took a step toward him, her voice low but steady now. "You asked me once why I did not trust the men in the alley," she said. "I will tell you. They spoke as if they had already decided what she was. Not a person, but a problem to be carried out of sight. When I hear certain people in this house speak of her, I hear the same tone, the same impatience, the same hunger for what she represents instead of who she is." Alejandro's eyes darkened. "You speak freely for someone confined by my order." "When I was a child," she said, "my mother told me that when you are already cornered, you might as well stand tall. There is nowhere left to fall. What will you do? Throw me out, call the magistrate? You cannot do worse than those who placed that brooch already hope you will." He studied her for a long moment, then moved further into the room, letting the door close fully behind him. The small space felt even smaller. "When you accuse my cousin, and those around him," he said quietly, "you accuse my judgment. I trusted him. I allowed him near my mother's affairs. I listened when he told me she was losing her reason, that I must prepare for a future where she no longer knew her own name. Do you understand what it costs to admit that trust may have been misplaced?" "Yes," she said, "it costs pride, but it costs less than losing your mother or your house." Pain flickered in his eyes before he hid it. "And what of you, Isabel?" he asked. "Would it cost you nothing to see Esteban shamed, Inés embarrassed, the servants who mocked you proven wrong? Do you not have your own pride to feed?" "I have pride," she said, But I also have fear. If I am wrong, I will be the one who destroys any hope of peace in this house. I do not take that lightly. That is why I did not say these things before. But now they have already decided what to think of me. I have nothing left to protect but the truth." His shoulders lowered slightly, as if some tension had shifted but not vanished. "You spoke of your mother," he said. "What would she say to you now?" "She would scold me for speaking so boldly to a duke," Isabel said, a faint smile trembling at her lips. "Then when we were alone, she would say, 'If he is a man worth serving, he will hear you. If he is not, better to know now.' And what do you think?" he asked. "Am I a man worth serving?" "I do not know yet," she replied. "You stand between two roads. On one you believe what is easiest. On the other you look where it hurts. I am waiting to see which you choose." That struck him. He turned away, pacing a few steps in the narrow space, then back. "Very well," he said at last. "I will look where it hurts. I will question those I have not questioned. I will pull at the threads, even if the tapestry tears." "And if it tears?" she asked softly. "Then better torn and rewoven than left covering rot," he said. He moved to the door, then paused. "You will remain confined until I have answers," he added. "That cannot change yet. There are too many watching. If I release you now, it will be taken as proof of blindness." "I understand," she said. His hand tightened on the latch. "Isabel." "Yes, Excellency." "If it is proven that the brooch was planted," he said slowly, "and that others have used you as a piece on their board, if that happens, and I restore your name, will you still wish to leave this house?" The question surprised her. "Leave," she repeated. "You have made it clear you do not feel you belong here," he said. "If I clear you, you may return to your old life, to your work in Seville, to the room that you chose, or you may remain, under different terms. That choice is not for today. But I wish to know if in your heart you have already walked away." She hesitated. "I have thought of leaving every hour since I arrived," she admitted. "And yet, when I picture the Duchess waking and finding me gone, I cannot bear it. I owe her more than an empty chair, so no, I have not walked away in my heart. Not yet." He nodded, as if that answer mattered more than he would say. "Then wait," he told her. "Give me a little time to see whether I am a fool." "You are a duke," she said quietly. "People will forgive you many things. They will not forgive themselves if they discover they helped you be blind." He almost smiled at that, then left. The next days ran differently. Isabel remained confined, but the sense around her shifted. The guard outside her door changed more often, as if orders were being checked and rechecked. When Matilda brought her meals, her manner held less coldness, more strained politeness. "The household is restless," Matilda admitted one afternoon, when she thought the guard out of earshot. "The Duke has been speaking with everyone, steward, footman, maids, even the old housekeeper below the stairs." "What does he ask?" Isabel whispered. "Too much," Matilda said. "Who had keys to the Duchess's rooms? Who opened the jewelry box? Who left doors unlocked? Who spoke with Don Esteban in corners? He has the look he had when his father died, and the accounts were in disarray. It unsettles people." "Truth always does," Isabel murmured. Matilda hesitated. "I will tell you this," she said. "On the morning the brooch was found missing, I saw Don Esteban in the corridor near Her Grace's door earlier than his habit. When I greeted him, he said he was merely concerned for her health. Now I wonder if I should have wondered sooner." "Why did you not tell the Duke?" Isabel asked. "Because I am not a fool," Matilda replied. "Accusing a noble of anything without proof is like throwing yourself into a well and hoping there is water. But the Duke pulled the rope himself this time. He wishes to see the bottom." The physician came and went. The steward moved faster than usual, clutching ledgers and boxes. Servants were called to small rooms and emerged pale, their eyes wide. Isabel heard fragments. The guard outside her door had a loose tongue. "They asked me if I had ever carried letters for Don Esteban," he told another guard. "I have, but only to the post. That is no crime." "They asked me if I ever left a door unlocked at his request," the other said. "I could not remember. He has a way of making you forget that he asked." "And Inez," the first whispered. "What of her?" "She is clever," the second said. "She speaks much and says little, but even clever tongues slip when the Duke listens long enough." One afternoon the Duchess sent for Isabel. Matilda opened the antechamber door. "Her Grace insists," she said. The Duke has given permission. You may sit with her for a short time, but do not trouble her with talk of brooches and accusations. She tires easily." Isabel stepped into the familiar chamber with a rush of relief. The Duchess looked weary, but her eyes were clearer than Isabel had seen them in days. "There you are," she said. "They told me they had shut you in a small box like a forgotten portrait." "That is almost true," Isabel said with a wry smile. "How do you feel, madam?" "Like a woman who has watched a storm through a window," the Duchess replied. "Thunder, flashes, people running with buckets, but the rain falls on my son's head, not mine." "Has he spoken to you?" Isabel asked. "Yes," she said. "He came yesterday. He asked again about the days before I left. I remembered more this time." She tapped her temple. "Sometimes the door opens a little wider." He listened. He did not interrupt. "That is progress." "What did you remember?" Isabel asked softly. "Your cousin," she corrected herself. "No. His cousin. Esteban. He came to me with documents. He said he had spoken with lawyers in Seville, that they could arrange things so that, if my mind failed, the estate would pass smoothly into hands that could manage it. He assured me that he meant only to help Alejandro, that I would relieve him of a burden. But the more he spoke, the more I felt I was being pushed out of my own house while still standing in it." She frowned. "I remember one evening particularly. He grew impatient when I hesitated to sign. He said, 'Do not worry, my dear aunt. If you wander, we will find you. Your signature is but an ink stain compared to your comfort.' I felt cornered. The next morning, I walked out. I meant only to clear my head. I did not intend to vanish." She looked at Isabel. "But someone intended it for me. I feel that now." Isabel's hands tightened in her lap. "Did you tell the Duke all this?" she asked. "Yes," the Duchess said. He looked as if someone had struck him, not because of Esteban's words, but because of his own. He remembered that he had told me to trust his cousin. That hurt him more than anything Esteban did. "He is questioning him now," Isabel said, "and others." "Good," the Duchess replied. "Let him learn the weight of trust. It is a heavy thing to give and a heavier thing to take back." She took Isabel's hand. "Tell me truthfully," she said. "Do you wish you had left me in that alley?" "No," Isabel said at once. "Even if these days had ended my life, I would not wish you back there." "Then do not regret your courage," the Duchess said. "It has shaken this house in ways that were long overdue." The shaking showed itself fully 3 days later. The guard outside Isabel's door knocked softly. "The Duke orders you to dress in your best and come to the Great Hall," he said. "You are to be present." "Present for what?" Isabel asked. "He did not say," the guard replied, "but the whole house is astir. I think some reckoning is at hand." Isabel changed into the cleanest gown she had, the one the maids had given her when she first arrived. It was still simple compared to anything the ladies wore, but it was the best she owned. Her hands shook as she smoothed the skirt. The guard led her through corridors she had not walked since the first day. Servants moved in clusters, whispering. Some stared openly at her as she passed. Others looked away quickly. In the great hall, people were already gathered. Not the full household, but enough. Senior servants, the steward, Matilda, the physician, a few lesser relatives, Doña Inés, Don Esteban. At the head of the hall stood Alejandro, straight and still. Beside him sat his mother, in a chair brought down from her room. She looked tired but determined, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Isabel was placed to the side, within sight of them all, but not among them. It was a familiar position. Alejandro let the murmurs die down, then spoke. "You all know," he said, "that in recent months this house has been under a shadow. My mother's disappearance, her inexplicable return, the confusion around her state, the presence of a stranger who claims to have saved her and now stands accused of theft." His gaze moved over faces, pausing briefly on Isabel, on Esteban, on Inés. "I have listened to stories," he went on. "I have heard fears. I have seen how quickly suspicion falls on those with no protection. It is easy to point at the poorest person in the room and call them the danger. It is harder to look at those we dine with and question their smiles." A stir ran through the hall. Esteban's jaw tightened, though his smile remained. "I do not enjoy doubt," Alejandro said. "It is not in my nature to question every hand that reaches for mine, but recent events have forced me to do so. I have spoken with the steward, with Matilda, with footmen, maids, guards. I have examined accounts, letters, reports from Seville. I have listened to my mother when her mind opens brighter for a little while. From all this, a pattern has appeared. I will speak it plainly, so that rumor does not shape it instead." He turned to the Duchess. "Mother," he said, "will you tell them what you remembered of Esteban's visits before you left?" She drew a breath. Her voice was not strong, but it carried in the quiet. "My nephew," she said, looking at Esteban, "came often with papers. He spoke of wills and guardianship, of the burden I placed on my son. He urged me to sign things I did not fully understand. When I hesitated, he pressed. When I went to you, Alejandro, you said you trusted him, that I need not worry, so I tried not to. But the more he spoke, the smaller I felt in my own house." She closed her eyes briefly. "One day, after too many words, I felt I could not breathe. I walked out. I did not intend to vanish. Yet somehow I was found in Seville, not by my own household, not by my son, but by strangers who spoke of a cousin at court, and of being rewarded when the old lady's affairs were settled. If you cannot see the line between these things, then my mind is clearer than yours." A murmur rippled through the hall. Esteban's face had lost some color. "Words and impressions are not proof, some will say," Alejandro continued. "So let us add to them. The steward has confirmed that in my mother's absence, certain changes were proposed to the estate's management. Changes that would have placed significant authority in the hands of Don Esteban. The letters arranging these consultations were carried by my own servants at his request from this house to legal offices in Seville." The steward stepped forward nervously. "It is as His Excellency says," he murmured. "I saw the letters. I witnessed some of the discussions. At the time I believed them to be in good faith, as they were presented as a kindness to Her Grace and to the Duke. Now, I am less certain." "And the brooch," Alejandro said, "the symbol of my mother's joy at my birth. It vanished from her box. It was found in Isabel's chest. On whose suggestion was the search of her chamber conducted first, before all others?" Silence. Then, reluctantly, the steward spoke. "Don Esteban suggested it," he said. "He said it would be discreet to begin there. He said it would quiet whispers if nothing was found." "All very considerate," Alejandro said dryly, "especially given that Matilda saw him in the corridor near my mother's rooms that same morning. At an hour, he is usually still at his breakfast." Matilda sniffed. "He said he was merely concerned," she said. "I was foolish enough to believe him." Esteban stepped forward at last, his charm struggling against the pressure. "Cousin," he said, "this is not a trial, yet you speak as if it were. Yes, I suggested the search begin with the girl, because it was logical. She is new. She had access. I wished to clear her quickly and quietly for your sake. I never imagined the brooch would be there. If it was, then someone else placed it, perhaps to frame her. Or me. You cannot twist every action into malice." "And the men in Seville?" Alejandro asked. "Who spoke of a cousin at court? Who waited like vultures for a confused woman in fine clothes to pass their way? Who sent them?" "I do not know these men," Esteban protested. "Anyone can claim to have a cousin in a great house. It gives weight to their lies. Are we to be blamed for every scoundrel who uses our names?" Alejandro's gaze was hard now. "If this were the only thing," he said, "perhaps. But there is also the way you spoke to my mother. The papers you pressed her to sign. The eagerness with which you stepped into matters of the estate the moment she vanished, suggesting that I prepare for her permanent absence. The quiet discouragement you gave me when I wished to continue searching. I thought you were torturing yourself," Esteban said. "I wished to spare you false hope." "You wished to hasten acceptance," Alejandro corrected, "so that certain documents would no longer be blocked by the inconvenient possibility of her return." Inez lifted her chin slightly. "Alejandro," she said, dropping titles in the strain of the moment, "you tread a dangerous path. To speak thus publicly of your own kin is to weaken your house in the eyes of all who hear. Enemies will seize on it. Allies will wonder if you can trust anyone." "If I cannot trust anyone," he replied, "it is because I trusted too easily when it suited others. I will not make that mistake again." He looked back at Esteban. "I do not have a signed confession from you. I do not have the men from the alley bound before us, but I have enough to see a pattern. At best, you allowed my mother to be pressured and frightened for your own gain. At worst, you laid the ground for her disappearance and sought to profit from it. In either case, you cannot remain here as you have been." Esteban's charm finally cracked. "And what will you do?" he asked. "Cast me out? Parade your virtue while the world whispers that you turned on your own blood?" "I will do what is necessary to protect my mother," Alejandro said. "You will leave this house today. You will go to the estate in the north. You will not involve yourself in any affairs of Córdoba. You will place yourself under the oversight of the family's legal advisor there, who will report to me. If you attempt to act beyond those bounds, I will not hesitate to make this matter more public than you would like." "That is exile," Esteban said sharply. "That is mercy," the Duchess said unexpectedly. "If it were up to me, I would send you to the chapel steps with a bowl and see if your smile feeds you." A few servants lowered their heads to hide sudden, shocked smiles. Esteban's eyes flashed. For a moment Isabel thought he might argue further. Then he bowed stiffly, the movement lacking his usual grace. "Very well," he said. "You are the Duke. Enjoy your victory. When this house falls into chaos under the weight of your suspicion, remember who might have helped you bear it." He turned on his heel and left the hall. No one followed. Alejandro let the echo of his footsteps die before speaking again. "As for Doña Inés," he said, turning to her, "I do not accuse you of plotting my mother's disappearance, but I cannot ignore that your counsel has often nudged me toward mistrust of those without titles while leaving me blind to those who shared ours. It is clear to me now that our views of loyalty differ." She met his gaze steadily. "You think me selfish," she said. "I think you have your own plans," he replied. "Plans in which my heart and my house are pieces, not ends. Whatever future we might have considered together ends here. You will always be received with courtesy in this house, for the sake of your family's long friendship with ours, but that is all." A shadow crossed her face, quickly controlled. She curtsied perfectly. "I understand," she said. "I wish you wisdom in your choices, Alejandro. May they bring you peace." She stepped back into the crowd, her composure unbroken, but Isabel saw the tightness in her fingers. "And now," Alejandro said, turning so that his gaze swept the whole hall again, "one more matter. The name of Isabel Martín." Every whisper in the hall stilled. "It was easy to believe her guilty," he said. "She is poor. She is unknown. She arrived at the moment our troubles deepened. A jewel was found among her things. Many of you were content to decide, in your hearts if not aloud, that she must have taken what was not hers." No one spoke. "But I have seen enough to know that Jewel did not walk into her chest any more than my mother walked herself to Seville. It was placed there by hands that wished us to look down instead of across. I will not oblige them." He turned toward Isabel fully now, his voice losing its formal hardness. "You have been accused in front of this house," he said to her. "It is only right that you be cleared before it as well. Isabel Martín, before all who hear me, I know now that you did not steal from my mother. I know that you protected her when others would have used her. I know that you have paid for your courage with suspicion and confinement. I cannot give you back the hours spent in this cage, but I can give you back your name. In this house it will no longer be spoken with doubt." He bowed his head slightly toward her, a duke bowing to a maid. It stole Isabel's breath. For a moment, she could not move. Matilde stepped forward, as if understanding that something must be done. She curtsied to Isabel, not deeply but clearly. "Her name is cleared," she said. "I will see that the staff know it." Others followed. The steward nodded awkwardly. The physician inclined his head. The kitchen master, who had slipped in at the back, tugged at his forelock. Not all bowed, but enough. The Duchess smiled. "There," she said. "You see? Not all courage goes unpaid." Alejandro straightened. "What you do with your name now is your choice," he said to Isabel. "You are free to remain as my mother's companion, with wages and lodging worthy of that role. Or you are free to return to Seville, with whatever protection and assistance I can offer to make your path easier. I will not decide that for you." Isabel's throat felt tight. She managed only a small nod. "Thank you, Excellency," she said. I will think." "Do so," he replied. "No one will hurry you." The gathering dissolved slowly. Servants drifted away, murmuring among themselves. The shape of their whispers changed. Don Esteban's absence hung in the air like a door closed on a draught. Inez slipped out quietly, her face composed. The Duchess touched Isabel's hand as she passed. "Come to my room when this noise dies," she said. "We have things to discuss that do not include brooches or cousins." Later, when the hall had emptied, Alejandro found Isabel in a small courtyard off the main corridor. She stood alone by a stone basin, watching the water tremble with each falling drop from a narrow spout. The evening light drew soft lines on the walls. He approached without his usual entourage. For once there were no servants hovering, no guards within earshot, just the sound of water and distant voices. "Do you wish to be alone?" he asked. She turned. "I am not sure what I wish," she said, "but I do not think your company will harm me." A faint smile touched his mouth. "High praise," he said. She almost smiled back. "You cleared my name," she added. "I owe you thanks." "You owe me nothing," he said. "I owed you justice. It took me too long to pay." She shook her head. "You listened," she said. "Many would not have. That is more than I expected when I first saw your crest at my door." He glanced at the water. "When my father died," he said quietly, "I swore I would never let this house be ruled by shadows. Yet I nearly allowed it. I nearly let fear of scandal weigh more than truth. You disrupted that." "I only did what anyone should do," she said. "If you call that disruption, this house needed it." He looked at her again, his expression open in a way she had not seen before. There was still control there, but also something else. Uncertainty, hope, a trace of tenderness. "In Seville," he asked, "before all this, did you ever think of a different life?" She laughed softly. "Often," she said. "Then I would remember how much bread cost and how little my hands could earn. Dreams do not fill plates." "And now?" he asked. "Now, when you look ahead, what do you see?" "Fog," she admitted. "And choices I never imagined. Remaining here as your mother's companion, leaving with more money than I have ever held, perhaps, and trying to build something of my own. Either way, there will be whispers. People will say I used the Duchess, or that I was used by you." He winced faintly. "By me?" She met his gaze steadily. "Do you think the world will not speak if a poor girl stays in a duke's house under his protection?" she asked. "They will not care what is true. They will say what pleases them." "That has always been true," he said. "Of me, of you, of anyone with a pulse." "Yes," she said, "but their words fall harder on those with less cushion beneath them." He stepped closer, not so close as to be improper, but enough that his voice could drop. "Isabel," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded different now, less like a subject, more like a person. "There is another choice I did not mention in the hall, because it is not a matter to be paraded before servants and distant cousins." She felt her heart quicken. "Another choice?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. You can remain as my mother's companion. You can leave and build your own life. Or you can consider a life at my side, not as a guest, not as a servant, as my wife." The courtyard seemed to still. Even the droplets of water felt slower. She stared at him. "Your wife," she said, as if testing the words. "Yes," he answered. "I have resisted speaking it aloud. It has been growing in me since the day I saw you standing in that cramped room, facing me without bowing your spine. Each time you argued with me, each time you comforted my mother, each time you held to your truth when it cost you, I found it harder to pretend you were only a chance stranger. I thought it was gratitude at first. Then admiration. Then it was simply you." He looked away briefly, as if gathering courage of his own. "I know what people will say," he went on. "That I have lost my mind, that I have betrayed my class, that I have let a serving girl ensnare me. I know the burdens such a union would place on you. The whispers, the scrutiny, the constant need to prove that you belong. I do not offer you an easy path, but I offer you truth. My heart is not calm when you are not near. My house feels less honest when you are not in it. I cannot imagine building a future without your voice in it, challenging me when I err." Her throat closed around words. "You hardly know me," she managed. "I know enough," he said softly. "I know how you act when no one seems to be watching. That tells me more than any formal introduction ever could. What I do not know, I wish to learn. If you will let me." Tears stung her eyes. Not of pain now, but of overwhelm. She turned away slightly, pressing her palm to the cool stone of the basin. "You place a heavy choice before me," she said. "I know," he replied. "That is why I did not ask in the hall. I will not see you answer such a question under the eyes of those who hope to see you stumble." She drew a shaky breath. "I do care for you," she said very quietly. "It began with anger and fear and respect forced out of me by your title, but somewhere along the way it became calmer, deeper. I look for your footsteps in the corridor. I listen for your voice. When you doubt yourself, I feel it like a stone in my own chest." She let out a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. "That is not something I planned." "Nor I," he said. "But," she added, and the word tasted heavy, I am afraid of being paraded as a curiosity. I am afraid of being called a fortune hunter. I am afraid that in defending me, you will lose more than you know. And I am afraid that if I accept too quickly, I will betray not just myself, but every girl who has been used and then cast aside." He nodded slowly. "Those fears are not small," he said. "I cannot dismiss them with pretty phrases. I can only tell you what I can promise, that I will stand beside you when the whispers come, not hide behind you. That I will not be ashamed of you in any room. That I will listen when you tell me the house is becoming what it should not be. And that if one day you find you have lost yourself in the height of these walls, we will walk outside them together until you find your feet again." She looked at him then, truly looked, seeing not the Duke with his crest and his court, but the man who had knelt at his mother's bedside and let his voice soften when he thought no one watched. "I cannot answer you today," she said, "not because I doubt what I feel, but because I respect it too much to rush. My life has been turned upside down in a handful of weeks. I must let the pieces settle before I choose where to stand." He inclined his head. "Then I will wait," he said simply, "for as long as it takes for you to be sure. Whatever you decide, I will keep my word about your freedom. If you choose to go, I will not hold you with guilt." "Thank you," she whispered. He stepped back, giving her space again. "My mother will want to speak with you," he said. "She hinted as much. I suspect she has her own thoughts on the matter. She already told me not to let you make me smaller than I am," Isabel said, a faint smile returning. "Then she speaks wisely," he replied. "I will leave you now. If I stay, I might be tempted to ask you again, and that would be unfair." He turned and walked away, his steps measured. Isabel watched him go, her heart beating too fast and too slow at once. Later that evening, in the quiet of the Duchess's chamber, the older woman studied her face with keen, if tired, eyes. "He has spoken, has he not?" the Duchess asked. "About the brooch, about Esteban," Isabel replied. "Do not play foolish with me," the Duchess said. "I may forget where I left my comb, but I know the look of a woman who has been asked to bind her life to someone else's." Isabel flushed. "He has spoken," she admitted. "And?" the Duchess pressed. "I asked for time," Isabel said. "My heart is not light enough to leap without looking." "Good," the Duchess said. "Leaps are for children and fools. Women choose. They do not leap." She reached for Isabel's hand. "Whatever you decide, child, make sure it is your decision. Not mine, not his, not the whispers." "I am trying," Isabel said. "Then you are already farther ahead than most brides," the Duchess replied dryly. That night, when Isabel returned to her antechamber, not as a prisoner now, but as a guest who had not yet chosen her room, she stood at the small window and looked out over the darkened courtyard. Somewhere beyond, Alejandro would be in his study, dealing with ledgers and letters and the consequences of the day. She pressed her hand lightly over her heart, feeling its unsteady rhythm. Her name was cleared. The shadows around the Duchess were thinning. The house had shuddered and settled into a new shape. The worst dangers had been faced. What remained was a quieter danger, one that lived not in alleys or corridors but in choices and promises. She did not yet know which path she would take. But for the first time in her life, the choice itself felt like a gift rather than a distant dream. The next morning, Isabel woke before the bells. For a moment she did not remember why her chest felt so tight. Then the courtyard scene rushed back to her. The water, the evening light, Alejandro's voice asking her to be his wife, her own trembling answer asking for time. She sat up slowly in the narrow bed of the antechamber. The house was quiet still. Only a faint clatter far off hinted at kitchens waking. She dipped her hands in the basin, letting the cool water steady her. When she lifted her head, the face in the small mirror was the same as always. Dark hair, clear eyes, the simple features of a girl born in Seville's back streets. Yet something in her gaze had changed. There was a question there that had never been asked before. A light knock sounded. "Yes?" she called. Matilda opened the door with unusual delicacy. "Her Grace asks for you," she said. "More warmly than usual, if I may say. You should not keep her waiting." Isabel stood at once. "Is she unwell?" she asked. "She is, as she has been," Matilda answered. "Some moments bright, some clouded. Today seems a bright one. Come." The Duchess's chamber was filled with morning light. Doña Mercedes sat by the window, shawl over her shoulders, a cup of chocolate on the table nearby. When she saw Isabel, her face lit up. "Ah, there you are," she said. "Sit. I have been impatient. An old woman's privilege." Isabel came closer. "Are you sent for me?" "I went to sleep with your face in my mind and woke with it still there," the Duchess said. "That usually means my thoughts have business with someone. Sit." Isabel took the chair beside her. "He told me," the Duchess went on at once. "My son, he came here last night after speaking with you. His ears were red. That is how I know when his heart has walked ahead of his head." Isabel flushed. "I did not expect him to speak of it so soon," she murmured. "He tells me more now," the Duchess said. "He is learning that secrets weigh more than they protect." She studied Isabel's face. "He asked you to marry him." "Yes," Isabel said, the words small and large at once. "And you did not fling yourself at his feet in gratitude," the Duchess added, a small smile tugging at her mouth. "You asked for time. Thank heaven. For a moment I feared you were sensible. Do you think it is foolish to hesitate?" Isabel asked softly. "I think it is wise," the Duchess replied. "Love is not a rope that drags us, it is a path we choose. You have walked many hard roads, child. You know the value of choosing one with your eyes open." Isabel looked down at her hands. "I am afraid," she admitted, "of what people will say, of what I might become, of losing myself inside these walls." The Duchess reached out and took her hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Come," she said, "help me stand. My legs need reminding they still exist." Isabel rose and supported her. Together they walked slowly to the window. Outside, the inner courtyard spread below, with its clean stone and small patch of greenery. "Look," the Duchess said. "What do you see?" "Servants," Isabel said, "carrying linens, a boy sweeping, a girl with a basket." "And beyond them?" the Duchess pressed. "The walls," Isabel said. "High ones." "Yes," the Duchess nodded. "High walls. When I was young and first came here as a bride, I saw those walls and thought they were arms. They held me. They kept the world out. Later, when my husband died and every cousin with ink on his fingers told me what to sign, I looked at those same walls and saw a prison. They had not moved. I had." She turned to Isabel. Her eyes were clear, lit by old pain and new understanding. "Cordoba will not change its stones for you," she said. "Its walls will be walls. Some days they will feel like safety, some days like a cage. The only difference will be the person walking between them. If you choose my son, promise me you will not shrink to fit other people's patterns. Promise me you will make this house more like your small room in Seville than that alley where we met." "How could I?" Isabel whispered. "I am one woman. One woman carried me out of confusion," the Duchess said. "One woman made a duke question the ground he stood on. Do not pretend you are small, Isabel. It no longer suits you." Isabel smiled despite herself. "You speak as if you have already decided," she said. "I have," the Duchess replied. "But my decision is only mine. I have prayed for years that my son would find a wife with a spine as strong as her heart. I did not imagine she would come from a poor house in Seville. That is my lack of imagination, not God's. If you say yes, I will rejoice. If you say no, I will mourn, but I will still bless you. Because you will have chosen honestly." Isabel swallowed hard. "How did you choose?" she asked. "When you married?" The Duchess's gaze grew distant. "I was told," she admitted. "My father chose. The title was good, the estate strong. Your future is secure," he said. "Love will come." She smiled sadly. "Love came in its way, but there were days I envied the women in the streets who could at least choose the men who broke their hearts. I do not wish to envy anyone's sorrow, Isabel said. Then do not, the Duchess replied. Choose with your own hand. If you marry my son, do it because you have looked at his temper and his pride and his kindness and said, yes, I will knot my days to his. Not because he is a duke, not because he saved your name, not because I wish it, because you do. Isabel nodded slowly. I will try, she said. Do more than try, the Duchess said briskly. Now go. Walk. Listen. See what your heart says when it is not standing in front of him like a rabbit before a carriage. Later that morning, Isabel slipped into the servants' corridor. She had not walked it freely since her confinement. It hummed with life, footsteps, murmurs, the scrape of chairs. As she passed, conversations dipped, then rose again, altered. She is cleared, a woman whispered. Did you hear the Duke? In front of everyone. Cleared today, a man replied. But if she marries him... Marry him, do you think he would? Another cut in. A girl from nowhere with no family name. He looked at her yesterday as if she were made of something more than bread and water, the first woman said. I saw it. Even if he asks, the man said, would you accept? To live under those eyes? Noble eyes, servant eyes, all of them watching your every bite? No, thank you. Give me a kitchen and a small garden instead. Speak for yourself, the woman laughed. I would accept and learn to walk on marble without slipping. Isabel moved before they could see her. Their words followed her like small birds, some pecking, some singing. In the laundry room, steam rose as women worked. One of them, the older maid who had once defended Isabel when others gossiped, saw her and wiped her hands on her apron. Isabel, she said, I'm glad to see you walking freely. Thank you, Teresa, Isabel replied. I hope they did not question you too harshly. They asked if I had seen you with jewels in your hands, Teresa said. I told them the only jewels I ever saw you touch were the Duchess's tears. They did not seem pleased with the answer, but they wrote it down. Isabel smiled faintly. Teresa, she said, may I ask you something? Foolish. Foolish questions are often the only honest ones, Teresa said. Ask. If, Isabel said slowly, if a man of high rank asked you to share his life and you cared for him, would you accept? Knowing what comes with it. Teresa snorted softly. Child, at my age, if any man asked me to share his life, I would first ask to see his teeth and his temper, she said. Rank or no rank, she sobered. But if I were young and I cared for him, I would ask myself three things. Does he make me small? Does he listen when I speak? And does being near him make me hope to be better, not just richer? If the answers were no, yes, and yes, she shrugged. Then I would put on my best dress and let the world wag its tongue. You make it sound simple, Isabel said. Nothing is simple, Teresa said. But some things are clear. The world will find a reason to despise you whether you marry high or low. You might as well give it a joyful reason. Isabel left with those words stirring her, like a spoon in a pot. In the afternoon, a familiar figure appeared in the small chapel on the estate. The priest from Seville sat on one of the benches, his hands folded, his eyes on the altar. Isabel saw him by chance as she passed the open door and stopped, surprised. Father? She called softly. He turned and smiled. Ah, he said. The girl from the alley, who brought me a mystery and then stole it away. I did not steal her, Isabel protested, then laughed. What are you doing here? The Duchess insisted on sending thanks to our chapel, he said. The Duke sent a carriage for me. He wished me to see with my own eyes that the lost sheep you led into my fold did not wander back out. And your story has been on my mind. I wanted to see how it ended. It has not ended yet, she said. So I gather, he replied. Sit. She sat beside him. The chapel was modest compared to the great church in Seville, but it smelled the same, wax and stone and old prayers. I hear you have had a difficult time, he said. Accusations, locked doors, brooches. You hear much, she said. Servants talk when they feel safe, he replied. And I have always had an honest face, or so I am told. She hesitated. He asked me to marry him, she blurted. I assumed as much, he said. Only a fool would fail to see the way that man looks at you. She stared. Is it so obvious? To old eyes, yes, he said. To yours, perhaps less so because you stand in the middle of it. I do not know what to do, she confessed. My heart pulls one way, my fear pulls another. Then give them both a fair hearing, he said. Tell me what your heart says. That I love him, she said simply. The word slipped out before she could dress it. That I have come to love him in ways I did not understand, until he was willing to lose face before his own house for my sake. That I cannot imagine leaving his mother. That when I picture walking away, something in me cries out. And your fear? He asked. That I will drown, she said. In duty, in expectations. That I will hurt him by not knowing how to move among his world. That people will think I came here for his title, and I will have to listen to that lie until the end of my days. He nodded. Strong fears, he said, worthy of respect. But tell me this. If you refuse him, will people stop speaking of you? She thought of the servants' whispers, the stares in corridors. No, she admitted. So speech is not something you can escape, he said. Only something you can choose not to serve. The question is not whether people will talk, Isabel. They will. The question is whose voice will guide you, theirs or your own conscience. And God's, she added. He smiled. Sometimes those are the same, he said. Sometimes we pretend not to hear one and blame the other. She sighed. You do not tell me what to do. It is not my place to tell you whom to marry, he said. I can only remind you of what marriage is. It is not a reward for good behavior. It is not a ladder to climb. It is two people choosing to carry each other's burdens for the rest of their days. If you look at Alejandro and see a man whose burdens you wish to share, whose faults you can forgive, whose virtues you can support without losing yourself, then say yes. If not, bless him and walk away. And if I say yes and regret it, she whispered. If you say yes honestly and work at it daily, he replied, you will have fewer regrets than if you run from love out of fear. But even then, God's mercy is larger than your mistakes. Do not let the possibility of future pain rob you of present grace. She sat quietly for a moment, then nodded. You have given me no orders, she said. I am glad you noticed, he replied. You have had enough of those. That evening, as the sun sank and the stone of the palace warmed with the memory of the day, Isabel walked into the small courtyard where Alejandro had first spoken his heart. The fountain murmured. The air was still. He was there as she had hoped, standing with one hand on the low wall, his eyes on the sky turning golden. He heard her steps and turned. Isabel, he said. She came closer. Her heart hammered, but her feet felt sure. You asked me once what I see when I look ahead, she said. Fog, I told you, that was true. But fog does not mean there is no road. It only means I cannot see the end of it. And now? He asked quietly. Now, she said, I have walked a little further. I have listened to your mother, to the servants, to a priest, to myself. The fog is still there, but there is enough light to see your hand held out. I know what I want to do with mine. She took a breath. Alejandro, I do not know how to be a duchess. I do not know which spoon to use or which cousin must sit beside which at dinner. I will stumble. I will anger people who believe they were born to look down on me. I cannot promise you an easy life at my side. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. Nor can I promise you ease at mine, he said. I will be stubborn. I will work too late. I will sometimes forget that you are not one of my ledgers, to be balanced and closed. But I can promise that I will learn, that I will listen when you say I have wounded you, that I will never be ashamed to call you my wife. She smiled then, through the tears that had gathered. Then, she said, her voice firm. Yes, his breath caught. Yes, he repeated. Yes, she said again. I will marry you, not because you are a duke, not because you cleared my name, because when I imagine my days without you, they feel smaller than they should, because you have shown me the man beneath the title, and I find that I love him, because I wish to stand beside you when the walls feel like arms and when they feel like a cage, and remind you of the girl you carried out of the alley who would not let you look away. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Alejandro's shoulders dropped, as if a weight he had been holding for days finally slid from him. A quiet laugh escaped him, half joy, half disbelief. I had prepared speeches, he said. Words about honor, about offering you security, about facing the world together. They all seem clumsy now. Then do not speak them, she replied. Speak the ones that are left. He reached out and took her hands. Isabel Martin, he said, his voice low and roughened by feeling. You came into my life the day you refused to let my mother be treated as a lost object. You forced me to look at my own house, my own choices, my own heart. You have been a mirror and a fire. If you stand beside me, I will be a better man than if I stand alone. I love you. I do not know how to say it in prettier words. I only know it is true. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She did not hide them. Those words are enough, she said. More than enough. He lifted her hands to his lips and pressed a kiss to her fingers, one after the other, as if sealing a vow in silence before speaking it aloud to the world. The gesture was simple, almost old-fashioned, yet it made her knees tremble more than any flourish would have. When shall we tell my mother? He asked. She already knows, Isabel said, laughing softly. She knew before I did, but we will tell her anyway. She deserves to hear it twice. Word spread quickly. It had a way of doing that in any house, but especially here. By the next day, the servants were buzzing like a disturbed hive. The Duke is to marry the girl from Seville, one said. He stood with her in the courtyard, holding her hands like a common man, another breathed. Common men hold hands, Teresa said tartly. Dukes should try it more often. Doña Inés heard the news with a still face. When she encountered Isabel in a corridor, she stopped and inclined her head. Señorita Martin, she said, or should I say, soon to be Her Grace. Isabel is enough, Isabel replied. I misjudged you, Inés said calmly. I thought you would be a brief disturbance, a stone dropped into a pond. It appears you were the river that fed it. I misjudged you too, Isabel said. I thought you cared only for position. I see now you care for stability as well. Perhaps you feared I would break it. Inés's mouth curved faintly. I feared you would break the pattern I knew, she admitted. Patterns can be comfortable even when they strangle us. Take care that in time you do not grow too fond of your own patterns. I will try to remember, Isabel said. It will be easier, Inés replied, with a man beside you who has already been forced to change once. She paused. I wish you well, truly. And if you ever need someone to handle the cousins you do not know where to seat, send for me. That battlefield at least I know. The wedding was not the grandest ceremony Córdoba had ever seen, but it was perhaps the most watched. Alejandro insisted that it be held in the estate's chapel, not in the distant cathedral. This house was shaken by what happened under its own roof, he explained. Let it also see its healing here. Invitations went out to the necessary nobility, of course. Carriages arrived with ladies in silks and gentlemen in polished boots. But Alejandro also sent for the priest from Seville and for the owner of the poor house where Isabel had rented her room. He even sent a messenger to the bakery near the cathedral. On the morning of the wedding, as Isabel stood in a small room putting on the simple but well-made gown the Duchess had insisted on giving her, there was a knock. She turned. Her breath caught. The baker's wife stood in the doorway, hands on her hips, eyes wet. Look at you, she said. When you bought bread that morning, I never imagined you would marry a duke. Neither did I, Isabel said, laughing through tears. Thank you for coming. I would not have missed it, the woman said. She stepped forward and straightened a fold of the gown with brisk tenderness. When they told me what you had done, I baked an extra loaf and said a prayer. Not that you would be rewarded with jewels and carriages, that you would not lose yourself. Keep that promise, I will try, Isabel said. The Duchess entered next, walking carefully, supported by Matilda on one side and a cane on the other. Her eyes shone. Dismiss everyone, she said. I want a word with the bride. When they were alone, she took Isabel's face in both hands. You are sure? She asked. It is not too late to run. I am sure, Isabel replied. If I ran now, it would be from myself. Good, the Duchess said. Then stand still. She traced a small cross on Isabel's forehead. You brought me home, she said. Now you will be this house's heart. When my mind wanders, I will look for you. When my son forgets who he is beneath his title, remind him. And when you forget who you are beneath any of this, come sit on my bed and let us be two women who have made painful choices and survived them. I will, Isabel whispered, voice thick. Now let us go, the Duchess said, before I weep and smudge your face. The chapel was full. Candles burned steadily. The murmur of voices quieted as Isabel entered on the Duchess's arm. There was no father to lead her. She did not feel the lack. On her other side walked the priest from Seville, chin lifted, as if guarding her with his calm. Alejandro waited at the front, his eyes fixed on her. He had never looked at her that way in public before, with all his walls down. She walked toward him, step by step, feeling each one as if it engraved itself into the stone. She saw the nobles watching, some curious, some disapproving, some secretly delighted at the scandal. She saw the servants gathered in the back, faces open, some smiling openly, some hiding tears. When she reached him, the world narrowed to his gaze. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, "for the ceremony and for what comes after." The words spoken over them were simple, promises to love, to honor, to support, to forgive. Isabel spoke her vows clearly, her voice steady. Alejandro's voice trembled once, then strengthened. The priest joined their hands. The Duchess, from her seat nearby, whispered, "God help them," with a tender smile. When it was done, when they were pronounced husband and wife, there was a moment of stillness, as if even the air had paused. Alejandro lifted Isabel's hand to his lips again. This time the kiss was not private, but she felt no shame in it. The first to cry out was Teresa. "Long live her grace," she shouted, voice breaking. The servants took it up, their cheer filling the chapel. Some of the nobles joined in, some clapped politely, some merely inclined their heads. It did not matter. The sound of those who knew her as Isabel, the girl from the courtyard, carried greater weight in her heart. Days turned to weeks. The house adjusted, as houses do. There were stumbles, of course. Isabel addressed a visiting baron by the wrong title once, and left a countess standing in a draught. At dinner, she sometimes glanced at the wrong fork and saw amused eyes watching. But she also walked the servants' corridors without fear, listened to their complaints, adjusted wages where she could, spoke to Alejandro of long hours and aching backs. "We cannot change everything," she said, "but we can change some things, enough to let them know they are seen." He listened. He argued sometimes, then yielded more often than not. Doña Inés visited rarely, but when she did, she behaved with courtesy. Once during a quiet afternoon she remarked, "You have made this house louder." "I hope not unbearable," Isabel replied. "Not unbearable," Inés said, "just more alive." From the estate in the north came occasional letters from Esteban. They were formal, full of complaints about damp weather and feeble company. Alejandro read them, answered with measured politeness, and then set them aside. Isabel saw the sadness in his eyes afterward and touched his hand. "Kinship does not vanish," she said. "It only changes shape." "I know," he replied. "I do not rejoice in his exile, but I rejoice that my mother is not signing papers she does not understand." The Duchess had bright days and cloudy days. On the bright ones she sat in the courtyard with Isabel, watching servants pass. "Do you remember the alley?" she asked once. "Yes," Isabel said. "I do. I remember a shadow," the Duchess said. "Two men, their words like pins, then a girl, a thin girl with fire in her eyes. I do not remember your face clearly from that day, but I remember the feeling, relief, as if someone strong had taken my hand. I am glad I did not pull away." "So am I," Isabel replied. On cloudy days, the Duchess sometimes mistook Isabel for a nurse from long ago, or called her by a wrong name, but one thing remained constant. She never looked at Isabel with suspicion, only trust. One evening, months after the wedding, Isabel stood again in the same courtyard where so much had begun. The fountain still murmured, the walls still rose, the sky above was wide and open. Alejandro came to stand beside her. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Any of it?" She turned to him, surprised. "You ask that now?" "I promised to ask," he said, "not to assume." She took his hand. The gesture no longer shocked her. It felt like breathing. "There are mornings," she admitted, "when I wake and forget where I am, when I expect to see my small ceiling and hear the neighbors arguing through thin walls. In those moments I feel a pinch in my chest for the girl who did not have to worry about seating charts." "And then?" he asked. "And then I hear your mother calling me," she said, "or I hear you arguing with a steward over the cost of firewood, and I remember that this is the road I chose, with all its stones and all its flowers." She smiled. "No, Alejandro, I do not regret it. Not even the hard parts, because they mean the choice was real." He exhaled, tension he did not admit leaving his shoulders. "Nor do I," he said. "Though I admit, when I see certain faces still stiffen at the sight of you wearing my mother's jewels, I long to take their titles and send them to the north with Esteban." "You will not," she said gently. "No," he agreed. "I will not. But I think about it." She laughed, leaning her shoulder lightly against his arm. "Let them look," she said. "They cannot change the truth. A girl from Seville walked into an alley and chose not to look away. The rest followed from that. Whatever they say, they cannot take that from me." He looked at her with a warmth that had nothing to do with titles. "You have changed this house," he said, "more than any law I could sign." "And you have let it change," she replied. "That is its own kind of courage." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the water. In another part of the estate, a maid told a kitchen boy, "Do you know the story of how the Duchess came here? She was a servant like us. She saw someone in need and stepped forward. Now look." The boy shook his head in wonder. "Do you think something like that could happen again?" he asked. "Not in the same way," the maid said. "Stories rarely repeat. But every day we pass aisles and alleys of our own. We can choose to walk by or not." Back in the courtyard, Isabel lifted her face to the evening sky. The walled world around her no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a place she had planted something in, something that would outlast even her, a way of seeing people not by their birth but by their choices. She knew there would be more trials, illness, quarrels, misunderstandings, years that wore on patience. She did not romanticize them away. But beside those shadows stood other images. Alejandro's hand in hers, the Duchess's soft smile, servants walking a little straighter, a young maid dreaming that courage might change her life too. Isabel had once believed the sky belonged to others. Now, standing within high walls and holding a duke's hand, she understood something truer. The sky belonged to anyone who dared to look up and walk forward, even when the path was unclear, even when their shoes were worn, even when the world said they were too small. She squeezed Alejandro's fingers, feeling them tighten around hers in answer, and stepped with him into the house that had become not a cage, but a home remade by the simple, stubborn act of choosing love over fear. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.